Good evening. This meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment is called to order. It's August 20th, 2024. The first item of business is approval of the minutes of July 16th, 2024. Does anybody have any comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, I'm sorry.
I have
sorry,
one
Mr.
suggested
Neese.
edit before we get a motion. It's on page 4 of the minutes. It's about halfway down the paragraph. There's a sentence that starts with Mr. Rayum agreed the property was unique. Before that, I suggest inserting, Mr. Neese confirmed that the city had a recorded easement on the adjacent property that's registered in the Rockingham County deeds. Rockingham County deeds, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Rockingham County Registry of Deeds.
Yes.
Or CRD.
There you go.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. Okay, the minutes are approved. I would like to take items 2, F, and G out of order. It's a request for postponement for both of them. So it is, I have it on here. It is, yes.
Madam Chair, I would move that we take items 2F and 2G out of order.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so it is, the first one is 84 Thaxter Road. And do I have the request for the reason?
Madam Chair, I move that we postpone that item for, to the next monthly meeting in September.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, and any discussion?
I'll just speak to my
Yes,
motion.
please.
The applicant's representative has indicated that he is ill and not able to participate this evening and is doing so to protect all of us. So with that, I would say that we should grant the request.
Okay, does the second have anything to add? I'm going to make you the second, Ms. Marchison.
No, I do not.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay, then the motion is to allow the postponement for 84 Thaxter Road. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nobody. Okay. The next one that was asked was G, right?
Yes.
So that's 377 Maplewood Avenue. Would also like a
Make a motion
postponement.
to postpone 377 Maplewood Avenue till September.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
For the same reasons as the prior motion, the representative is unable to attend this evening.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Then we will begin the evening with just a reminder that the person making the presentation is allowed 15 minutes. And if you would like more than that, we request that you ask us first and the board will decide if we will give you that extra time. Any speakers have 5 minutes each for public comment. Right, new business. The request of Martha and Brian Rattay, owners for property located at 0 Broad Street. Forgive me if that is not how you pronounce your name. That's all right. Whereas relief is needed to construct a primary structure and a detached garage on a vacant lot, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 6,101 square feet of lot area where 7,500 is required. B, 6,101 square feet of lot area per dwelling unit where 7,500 is required. C, 60 feet of street frontage where 100 feet are required. D, 31% building coverage where 25% is required. E, 5-foot right yard where 10 feet are required. And F, 2-foot rear yard where 20 feet are required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 221, Lot 96, and lies within the General Residence A District. Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. For the record, it's Rattay, but that's no problem. I've been doing this for a long time. My wife Martha and I are here representing ourselves, and we are here to talk about our plans to build a single-family residence on the side lot from a lot and a home that we purchased 2 years ago. As Madam Chairman said, we are looking for, there's a number of variances here, but the first three variances are 6,100. We're looking for a variance for 6,100 square feet, where 1,500 is required, 6,101 square feet per dwelling, where 7,500 feet are required, and 60 foot of frontage where 100 feet are required. The first part of our request is very similar to a request you had at last session's meeting relative to the fact that we purchased this lot 2.5 years ago. It sits within GRA on Broad Street. The dimensions of the lot are approximately 60 by 100, and the intention is for us to develop there. Because it sits within GRA zone, the only use is a single or multifamily dwelling. It should also be stated that the Broad is an interesting street. It's an extremely wide street. Our side of Broad, which backs up to Sagamore, just about every single lot on Broad is 60 by 80. In fact, they are very much cookie cutter. There are some variances, but what you will notice as you look on Broad Street is that the size of the homes and lots are very, very consistent. There's lots of non-conformities with outbuildings. Homes are very close to lot lines. Outbuildings are very close to homes and lot lines. And what we are attempting to do is build a single-family residence very much in keeping with the size and flavor and style of the neighborhood, but it would be impossible for us to build anything without looking for variances because of the size of the lot. The relative to lot coverage, our lot is also unique in that when we purchased the home was completed in 1905, and we just restored the home that is on the, there's two lots, so there's a house with a lot and a house without a lot without a home. We just restored the home. That, as far as I can tell by city records, both lots were purchased by the original owners of the home at 457. That lot has been taxed by the city since that time. It has not been voluntarily or involuntarily merged by the city. And so, as far as we are aware, we have been paying on the property, and this is the only use that we can provide for that house. That said, the original owners built a garage in back of the existing house. The garage sits over the lot line to divide both lots. And so part of our lot coverage calculations, we had several working workshops with the city, and Steph helped remind us that we needed to consider the portion of the garage that falls over the lot as a percentage calculation. So where our proposed plan is 3% over the 25% maximum coverage for 28, which is very, very close. We're pushed a little bit further to 31% because we have 120 square feet that we have to plan for because of the garage of the existing house coming over onto the new lot, so that is also calculated. Should also be said, should be mentioned that the existing garage is 44 inches, 44 to 45, depending on my tape measure, as it sits from the back lot. So while I was talking to someone before this meeting, and it said there's a lot of variance that's being requested here. There is a lot of variance that's being requested here, but it is very much in keeping with what you see on street. And we provided some photos as well as a Google image so that you can get an idea of where we're looking at. Which brings me to the last two-part variance, which are the setbacks for the garage. The home is within all requirements for the city. It will be within setbacks. It will be far under the maximum height, under square footage, but we would like to have, as is consistent with many or most of the houses on the street, a house and a separate garage. Both my wife and my parents live here in town. We're both the oldest of our families, so care will fall to us. So we have 4 aging parents to consider. We also both work remotely. I'd like to stay married, so it's a little bit easier when there's 2 structures than 1. But the 5 foot from the right and the 5 or 2 foot from the back is because if you will look in the packet at the pictures, you will see that the lot is long and narrow. But in the back, there are 6 arborvitaes they were just trimmed. They were 85 feet. They are now trimmed down to 45 feet. Their foliage expands to about 25, and I'd say 8 to 10 feet of the foliage falls over onto our lot. It is very much almost a 20-foot wide barrier, and it is they could have been worked on a little bit sooner. They're very, very mature. It's a solid wall of green. To the right is a very large Japanese maple that's probably 30 feet long. Very similar circumstance, shorter, but falls over on our property. Our setbacks are requested, but taking into consideration the fact that that corner of the lot is even within fall and winter when there are no leaves on the trees, quite private and quite backed up to vegetation, so that the location of our proposed structure would not infringe upon privacy use of our other neighbors. And in fact, most of our neighbors wouldn't even see it on the backside. That being said, we have provided a packet of letters. There are 8 letters of support that we have from all 7 of our abutting neighbors, 3 in the back because there are 2 lots, 1 with a house where we're living and 1 without, 1 on either side and 2 in front. We also have an additional letter from a neighbor. All are in support of our design and our plans. All have watched us restore the home on the other side in the last 2 years, and we've gotten to know them. We sat down with each and every neighbor and showed them very clearly our plans to build a 4-square that is very much in keeping with the 4-square and the bungalow size of the style of the neighborhood. Even the 2 structures and the setbacks are very much consistent with what you will see in the neighborhood. And if you look on the last page of our packet that we submitted, you'll see a Google Earth image, and where all the black boxes are outbuildings, garages, outbuildings, separate buildings that are, as you can see from the other side of Broad, it's much more dense. The lots and the homes and the lines are much, much closer on that side of the street. Let's see. One additional consideration is that we will be building, our plan is to build new construction and to do so as passively and responsibly as possible. So we are looking to make an extremely insulated passive house. And in considering that, we are looking for a solar array. Because of the design of the house and because of the track of the sun, we only have 1 roof angle on the 4-square home plan to put a solar array. The way the garage is designed is that you will have a single angle roof to utilize the entire surface area of the roof as an adjunct solar array for the running of both properties. Or excuse me, both structures. With regard to your decisions based upon the 5 considerations, variance will not be contrary to the public interest, and the spirit of the ordinance will be observed. As we've said, what we're looking to do is very much in keeping with what exists on many other lots within Broad Street. We are in fact trying to repeat exactly what we already own, but in smaller scale with a smaller home as well as a smaller garage. Because we plan on living here throughout the rest of my days, I would prefer to only pay tax on space that we're using and not on what we aren't. So part of the other reason we're asking for 2 structures is to keep the home itself at 2 stories and have the garage. If you put the garage into the larger building, it becomes larger much faster. In any case, what we're asking for is very consistent with what many of our neighbors and other residents in town have, especially on that street. Substantial justice will be done, as I've said, sitting within GRA. While we can certainly come up with different house plans, a single-family home is the only use. I can only ask for your consideration to say that we started this process January 1, and it's taken us till now to actually have a full plan after trashing many. So please do keep that in mind. The value of the surrounding properties would not be diminished, quite the contrary. I've lived in this town, we've lived in this town for 25 years. It does seem that as town becomes more defined and more resigned and more designed, that property values continue to go up. I would think that a space, the only open space on Broad Street, would have a very positive effect on the value of surrounding homes. And then, again, the last item, 10.233.25, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. Ultimately, I think that would fall to Martha and I, whereby if we weren't allowed to build, we wouldn't have the opportunity to utilize the land for anything, and it would be very difficult for us to figure out then a plan. So again, just to recapitulate, the first three portions of the variance are requested, and no matter what the decision is tonight, I will be back to be requesting the same 3 variances for whatever we build. Relative to the other 2, again, I would ask you to please look within the packet. We obviously prepared this ourselves and tried to put together quite a bit of detail, but as you will see, based upon what the city or what that part of town looks like, what the other houses next to us look like, what the back of our lot looks like, and how thick the vegetation is, to consider the coverage and the location of the garage.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Rattay before he sits down? Mr. Russo?
First of all, one comment, which is, I think you did a very nice job of preparing the package. It's very
you.
readable. It's nice to.
We had some help with the city, so I really appreciate that. I think we had 5 or 6 different sessions, so Steph was
good.
very, very helpful and granted us a little extra time to make sure we had it easy
Well,
to
it's
follow.
nice to read an application in the property owner's own words, well-structured like this. But my question is really one of clarification. On the lot coverage variance, is you may have already said this, but I didn't quite grasp it. The portion of the garage from your current structure that bleeds over onto this lot, is that counted as part of the lot
That is
coverage
counted as
calculation?
part, and that takes us from, we had miscalculated because I forgot the stairs on the garage and the porch. In any case, the house and the garage as designed are 28% coverage. If we add the 120 feet from the existing garage that's over the line, that takes us to 31.
Okay, so 28% sans garage, basically.
Correct.
Okay, very good. Thank you. That's my only
Sure.
question.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking at page 36 in our packet, it's your sheet A-3. So a couple concerns here. One is on the upper row, you have left side elevation, front elevation, then a right side elevation and a rear elevation. Your right side elevation kind of looks like it's probably your rear elevation, and your rear elevation label kind of looks like it should go with the right side. I just want to validate that is correct.
Sorry, I want to make sure, I think I know where you're asking, I just want to make sure I have the right sheet. Oh, thank you.
If it will be easier for you to approach the screen, you may, but you need to take a mic with you and do not touch. Mike. Thank you.
If it comes out.
Does, I've been told, yes.
One more time, repeat the question. One more time.
Yep, so going from left to right, you have left side elevation, right front elevation, then right side elevation, which I believe is actually your rear elevation. And then what you've labeled rear elevation, I believe is your right side.
That better? There we go. Yes, you are correct. I'm very
Okay.
sorry. That is exactly correct.
All right, and then I'm trying to understand, there's a lot of re-scribbling here of the stairwell, or the
The-
stairway. What is that trying to represent?
Yeah, so thank you. The CAD system that our designer architect worked with doesn't have a function to do I don't know what you call this stairwell. Essentially from the side, the left side elevation, rather than this staircase starting at the bottom, it would start here and wrap around. So by the time it got to the rear portion of the building, it's probably 4 feet in the air. So these stairs basically just wrap partially around the side, partially around the back to the door for the second floor of the garage.
Okay. And then looking at the second floor plan, it appears that you have a bathroom and what appears to be a functional kitchen. Is there an intent to make this an accessory dwelling unit?
There is a bathroom. It is a sink. I don't know if I don't know what would qualify as a functional kitchen, but I just had that put there as a plan. We're looking more at what that top floor needs to be. I would like to include a bathroom, but we aren't considering it a unit. I don't know what the city considers that.
Okay. And then, so you have essentially a complete second story to this garage. What is your right side elevation, labeled rear elevation? Those 3 windows would be facing toward a neighboring property, is that correct?
That is correct. We did change those windows to be what are called privacy windows, so they are small. They are perfectly square and higher, so that they let light into the second floor of our building, but they are high enough so that they are only at head level, so that in the fall, when the Japanese maple does not have leaves, my neighbors don't feel like we're looking in on them.
Okay.
And these are the kinds of considerations that we spoke about with our neighbors, which is why we then have the letters, because we kind of made sure that for each side we had considerations so everyone felt comfortable.
Page 37, the next page down, shows a photo of the existing garage, and it appears to be it is a 2-car garage, is that correct?
Yes, it is. It's
Both
20
properties.
by 20.
Okay. But it serves usefully as a 2-car garage, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, I guess my question for you is in lieu of the garage in the opposite corner, did you consider, and was it discussed with your neighbors, of possibly simply enlarging that garage or doing something to spread the 2 cars over both properties with perhaps a common driveway, something along those lines?
I think it would be quite a nightmare in order to figure out. It's even unclear as to how I have to give a right-of-way should I ever sell the other property. So it becomes very difficult to have a structure that's owned by 2 people, and if we do, I've had a Condex before, we have to go through HOA, but it's really quite challenging, and I don't, honestly, I'm just about 50. I'm not sure I want to go down that path.
Yeah, I mean.
But it is very much a consideration. I think if you look at Broad, it'll be very clear that it's pretty consistently house, garage, driveway, and so that was the other consideration in keeping it so that once we build on this open land that's been open for 50 years, somebody comes by and forgets that there was ever open land there. It looks very much like it belongs.
Okay. And then page 40 of our packet, that's the diagram that you're showing with the outbuildings, presumably other garage-type structures. Are any of those 2-story garages like what you're proposing?
A number of them are, actually. A number aren't, and a number are. I'd say probably I'd say probably 60% are probably older and single-story, and 40% are more modern and taller. There is, in fact, one that has to the right of us, there's a building that has 2 buildings, and all 3 buildings are put together on the same lot, and they're all 3 stories. It's on Sagamore. But there is quite a variety of building that you will see on Sagamore and on the other side of Broad. My side of Broad is pretty consistent.
Okay. And I do appreciate you calling it a square house as opposed to a New Englander, although your example is probably actually a little more rectangular than a square, but I'll give it to
I
you.
think it still qualifies as a 4-square. I mean, I think it doesn't have to be exactly square, but we haven't figured that out yet.
Probably not. I think the Sears patterns were all pure squares when you bought them from there, but.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Marchison.
So I just want to clarify, you said you're going to continue ownership of both lots for the time being, correct?
Correct.
All right, so, but the reality is, at any time, you could convey the other lot, and you're stuck with a garage that is slopping over onto that other lot. Did you think about making the fix now and moving the other garage more firmly onto the lot?
No, because there's a good likelihood that we will sell that property in the future. However, the house that the plan and the variances that I'm asking for are the last house that I will be involved in this town, and that will be the last house that I live in. So I just assumed that because it will be our house, I would do whatever is necessary with the city to allow for that 5.5 feet to be over, but I simply just leave it as is. And leave well enough alone. I'm perfectly prepared, but that's why I also want to draw the distinction on why I'm making a request for a little bit of give on the maximum coverage, because I'm just going to give it to that, the other house, the other owner.
And you're going to stay in the house that's being built?
Correct.
Okay.
I figured the next move is really easy. It's just right across the street to the cemetery. It's much easier for my children, so.
Moving right along.
I mean, it's understandable. It's just that it's just very unique to find a structure from one lot to be on the other lot. And going forward, selling the two lots, that is going to be a complication.
It is, there was another board that made this possible. The owners, we're the third owner of this home since 1905. It has been through two other families, that's it. The second family decided to make the build, and there isn't really much I can do about it. And it would cost me, I would actually have to tear the garage fully down and rebuild it in order to make it functional the way that, as a smaller, so.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions? Yes, Mr. Mann.
Just a quick one. What's the square footage of the easement you plan to convey to Lot 42?
Of the garage, it's about 120 feet.
So from the front of the street all the way to almost the very back, that's 120 square feet?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Could you give me the question again? Maybe I misunderstood.
Okay. On page 31, where you have your current residence and the proposed structure, you have proposed driveway and building easement benefiting tax map 22142, which you're doing for the basis of the garage. What's the square footage of that easement?
Now I understand your question. I actually don't know the square footage. I only know the garage square footage. So I don't know the portion of the driveway.
Okay.
I don't have that answer for you.
And my next question, when you saw these plans at the planning department, did they deduct that square footage off the current square footage of the building lot?
That's to you, I think. Not-
I'm confused. Are you suggesting that he convey that area to the other lot?
He's proposing a building easement to take care of the 5.5 feet of the current garage that's on the building lot.
Yeah.
Okay. My question is how many square footage is that easement? He doesn't know.
It's
I
just
get it.
the garage.
And whether or not that square footage was deducted from the current square footage of the building lot.
I believe it's just the garage.
It's
No,
Which he's-
the easement runs from, the street all the way to the back of the property.
so Brian can confirm this, but I don't believe he's proposing doing an easement right now because there is an issue with giving an easement to yourself. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but you can't give an easement to yourself, so he's only going to, create that easement when the other property sells.
As far as I understand it, that's correct. I think we're putting the cart before the horse. The way the city and the state need to do things, and I'm new to this. I've consulted a lot of people, but I'm representing myself, so I've had to sort through some of this information.
Okay, I mean, therein lies my question, because granted, whether or not he can grant an easement to himself, but if he grants that easement, the building lot size, what he's proposing, is less than square footage.
The lot doesn't change. There is an easement over that
Oh,
property.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
And also, I don't believe the driveway counts in square footage anyway, it's only structure, so,
Well, it sounds it's square footage of the lot.
okay.
Are there other questions? I just wanted to say, when we asked you about the second story of the garage, the bathroom and the sink area that seems to be drawn in, and we asked about an accessory dwelling unit, and you said no or not right now. I just wanted to say that should you decide to use that, you would need to get a conditional use permit.
Okay.
You can't just move it.
Okay.
Okay?
Very good,
All right.
thank you.
Anything else? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor? Oh,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
you had another question?
I just remembered, I do have another
Okay,
question. I
please.
apologize, Madam Chair, if I
That's
may.
fine, that's fine.
All right,
Dave.
sorry. One last item that was on my mind was, you talk in here about a front setback requirement.
Thank
that's
you,
in
I
your deed.
apologize.
Yeah.
There is, so the city, thank you, one last item. The city setback from frontage is 15 feet. We do have a deed on that lot that comes from the Rockingham Registry of Deeds, which reads that we may not build within 20 feet of the front. So we have consulted with Derek Durbin, who we all spoke about earlier. He has told me that the city actually has no ability to enforce that. However, it is for us as the homeowners to manage. So we did, actually, one of the things that Seth was very helpful is that originally we were at the 15. We have moved it back to the 20 line, and in fact, the 22 feet to account for the stairs. So we are honoring the deed on that property.
Okay. More?
Yeah, and so as a follow-up to that, it also appears that the same restriction applies to your other lot. Is that also true, based off of looking at sheet, our 31 page in our package?
I'm sure it's on both lots, but the one lot already has an existing home and has accounted for that, so we'll do the same with the new home.
And just one final question, the arborvitae that you referred to, are those planted on your property or on your neighbor's property?
They're on my neighbors.
Okay, thank you.
The trunks are.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Then the public hearing is closed, but I will remind all of us that we do have many letters of support for this.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
That would be terrific, Mr. Russell.
I move to approve the application as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you.
Going through the 5 criteria, then, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest and would observe the spirit of the ordinance. The purpose of this zone is to promote the development of moderate to high-density single-family housing, and that is exactly what's being proposed here. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. I do think there's some merit to the tax history argument. We've heard that before, where a property owner has paid tax on a lot over a period of time, and it has been considered by the city as a buildable lot. And I think that it is just for that property owner to be able to utilize the lot based on that concept of taxation. Granting the variance would not diminish the values of the surrounding properties. I do believe that with all these letters of support, the neighbors have given this particular design due consideration and do not feel that it will be in any way diminishing their own property values. So I take that as evidence that that criterion is satisfied. And then finally, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship, and here we're looking for some unique aspect of the property. We've had a lot of discussion here tonight about the garage on the neighboring lot, which impinges upon this property. Without, I would say that because of that, the requested variance for lot coverage actually makes it appear as a higher number of a higher percentage of lot coverage than is really due to this structure. I think some of the other things we talked about are maybe future considerations and not really pertinent to this discussion. We don't know what the future state of that garage will be, but it certainly would would, in the current situation, be a special condition of this property, regardless of who owns the other property. And I would also say that with regard to the characteristics, the character of the neighborhood, I do think Broad Street has a very definable, tangible character. What's being proposed here fits within that character, not only architecturally, which is not really our main concern, but also just in terms of the spacing and the density of the development in the area, and the fact that it could continue to be a single-family dwelling. So for all those reasons, I support the application.
Mr. Mattson, do you have anything to add?
I'll just add that this lot was created before the current zoning standards, and so it's undersized, which contributes to some of the relief needed here. And but the lot is consistent with the other lots on that side of Broad Street, and this what's being proposed is consistent and reasonable. That preserves light, air, and privacy.
Thank you. Okay. Is there discussion before we vote? Yes, Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will not be supporting this motion. I have a lot of concerns about this application. Fundamentally, I do think that it is possible to put a house on it. I have a lot of concerns with the garage structures that are being proposed here. Or one is this overlap onto the two properties. I know that it's kind of been portrayed as a, well, we'll deal with it down the road kind of issue, but I do think to consider this a buildable lot, which is fundamentally what the applicant is asking us to do, I think it's an issue that does need to be addressed in more detail, exactly how it will be dealt with in the future, to come in and divide these into two properties. The applicant has indicated that is ultimately his intent. And it's just something that, for me to approve it right now, would be something that needs to be worked out. Additionally, I didn't hear anything in the maker of the motion and the second regarding the setbacks associated with the proposed garage, which are very, very tight up against the property line. I know the applicant's argument is, well, hey, there's really large trees there, but we're approving this in perpetuity. That garage is going to be much longer there than any of these arborvitae, potentially would be in terms of their lifespan. Additionally, they aren't on the applicant's property, they're on a neighboring property, so that whoever owns that neighboring property could decide what they want to do with it in the future. I just think that that's very tight setbacks for a two-story structure with windows that overlook a neighboring property. Understand that all the neighbors have come out and support, and I appreciate that. That said, this board isn't about a popularity contest. If it was, we just have everybody vote, and we would decide the matter that way. I do think that per our requirements, per the law, and per our criteria, that this project is not meeting that right now. I think there is some room for it to be reworked. I think that garage would need to be settled out. I think there's an opportunity maybe to create two garages or something, one on each property, that would solve this problem in perpetuity, but that's not what the applicant has proposed.
I would add that I didn't address the garage, but in my opinion, the proposed location of the garage is absolutely consistent with what else is to be found in the neighborhood, and on that basis, I'm comfortable with it. The arborvitae played no factor in my considerations. I don't. It's just an incidental fact, but I don't think it's the main point. So anyway, that's my clarification on at least one of the points that you raised.
Further discussion?
I will also not be supporting it. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I said Ms. Murchison.
So I also will not be supporting applications for exactly the same reasons as Mr. Rayum. I think there needs to be some attempt to pull that garage out of this side yard setbacks, and I recognize that that's sort of the character of the neighborhood. However, when you've got kind of a blank slate like this, I really think there needs to be an attempt to put it within the building envelope. I am also very uncomfortable with the fact that there's just so much speculation here. We've got a garage that's on the other lot. We have a possible need for a driveway on the second lot, which is probably okay, but the easement issues with the access to the existing garage, I find this too speculative, and I will not be supporting it.
Anybody else? Okay. A yes vote permits the building. Okay. Ms. Record?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
We have 8 voting members with Ms. Record.
Oh, sorry. So sorry. We do have a full house tonight. Okay. Then we're going to go to you, Mr. Neese.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Mantle?
No.
Ms. Margison?
No.
Mr. Rayum?
No.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So we are approved. You are approved. Thank you. Okay.
Nobody spoke.
Sorry. Item B is the request of Meadowbrook Inn Corporation owners for property located at 549 US Route 1 bypass, whereas relief is needed to construct a 4-story hotel with 116 rooms, which requires the following. 1, a special exception from Section 10.440, use number 10.40, to allow a hotel or motel with up to 125 rooms. And 2, a variance from Section 10.5B41.80 to allow 7.85% community space where 10% is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 234, Lot 51, and lies within the Gateway Corridor District. Is there anyone to speak to this?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Attorney James Scully. I'm here on behalf of the applicant. With me this evening is Alan Roscoe from TF Moran, who's an engineer that assisted with this project, as well as Jason Diorio, who's the architect on this project, who I hope can assist with any complicated questions should they arise. Just for a brief historical context, I think it's helpful to understand when this project, which predated me, currently this is the home of Portsmouth Chevrolet. When this project was presented to the city originally, there was a requirement that no automobile dealership could be within a specific distance of a residence. And so that's the reason for the specific location of Portsmouth Chevrolet. And on the site plan that went before the planning board some time ago, again, which predated me, this area where we're proposing to do the hotel was labeled as a proposed development area. So this has always been considered by my client and the planning board, is my understanding, as a future development area. So when we began looking at this project, we took a lot of things into consideration, one of which is the current egress and ingress of the property. We didn't want to necessarily alter that because of the way it flows and the DOT approvals that we've already received. When you're leaving Portsmouth Chevrolet onto Route 1 bypass, you have the ability, leaving our property, to go to the right on southbound on the bypass, or you could exit onto Coakley Road if you were to want to go northbound towards the traffic circle. So we didn't want to disturb those egresses and ingresses to our property. Another thing we considered and was the neighborhood and Coakley Road. And one of the things that my client really was pushing for was a use for this property that would be low impact. We did not want to do something, even with a permitted use like a fast food restaurant, where during the peak hours we would impede traffic to a significant amount. So one of the things we looked at is a more lower impact use with a hotel proposed such as this, where people could check in throughout the day, check out throughout the day, and avoid sort of a major traffic concern, which admittedly already exists at this intersection. So those were certainly the things we considered, and which led us to the special exception here for a hotel use, as opposed to some of the permitted uses that are already allowed. The second issue that we're here before you this evening is for the variance request. And the reason for the variance request is, as this board is all familiar, the zoning changed at the beginning of this year, and this property was moved into the Gateway District. One of the requirements there is 10% community space or open space. And one of the things that we evaluated when we were looking at that is, although our parcel is very large, it's roughly 18 acres, meeting that 10% requirement, a substantial amount of our property is wetlands. And as has been spoken about previously with different applications, I know the proposed hotel to our south We didn't want to interfere with Hodgson Brook. We didn't want to interfere with the wetlands at all. And so the reason for our variance request is to just bring that percentage requirement down slightly so we don't impact the wetlands, because there's really no feasible area to add additional community space to meet that 10% threshold without impeding the wetlands. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alan briefly to go over the site plan and sort of the layout of the hotel or proposed hotel. And then I will certainly come back and go through the criteria for the special exception as well as the variance. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Should I walk over to the screen and walk you through?
You can, but would you please put your name, say your name for us?
Oh, certainly. Alan Roscoe, TF Moran, offices here in Portsmouth.
Okay, thank you.
Alan, you can also use the clicker if that's easier to point at the screen.
Oh, I have a pointer.
Okay, which is
Oh, good.
those watching online can't see that on
Sure.
the.
All right. Well, if anybody can hear me, this is our site plan that we've prepared in support of the project. So the Portsmouth Circle is to our north page up. So the north arrow right here shows that this page is directly situated upwards. The circle is off the screen. Route 1 bypass is here, and this is the intersection with Coakley Road. We have not shown the completion of the parcel because we wanted to show the development aspects that we're proposing. As Attorney Scully mentioned, this is an 18-acre parcel, and there's approximately 11 or 12 acres of wetland that is associated with the Hodgson Brook that flows towards Coakley Road. So this hatch pattern that you see here on the drawing represents the wetland associated with the brook, and we've got about 6 or 7 acres of land available to us that has the Chevrolet dealership presently occupying the parcel. And again, as Attorney Scully mentioned, the southeast corner here is a vacant area that is ready to complete the project. With our architect and the recent zoning change, we've proposed an L-shaped hotel, 116 rooms, in following with the guidelines of the Gateway District to promote the building being close to the roadway and then having parking behind. We've tried to develop or propose the development in a sensitive manner to reduce any new paving, reduce any new parking. There's a clause in the site plan regulations where we can do a parking sharing computation for these two complementary uses because they don't conflict. So we're able to save approximately 10% of the required parking with our layout. The hotel itself requires 145 parking spaces by itself, but with the benefit of some of the display spaces that exist at the dealership, we're able to repurpose those, use those for parking for the hotel because they're fairly close. And even though we need 145 spaces, we're only going to build 62. So we're able to reduce the amount of new impervious to the area. And again, this is a benign use in terms of traffic. There's other uses that are allowed by right that could perhaps contribute more to the AM and PM peaks, especially at the intersection. But with a hotel use, you're going to have folks checking in the afternoon, early afternoon, and then departing late morning. So those peak hours have not occurred at the intersection when the new users will be accessing and egressing from the site. The other thing we were looking at is obviously with a development of this kind, you have drainage concerns. We're going to follow along with the example that the Chevrolet dealership is using. There's catch basins throughout the parking lot that convey runoff to infiltration units and treatment units, and then any overflows will discharge towards the wetlands. So the infiltration takes away a large amount of that runoff volume before it is discharged. And so we'll be following that same concept. The soils and the groundwater conditions here are very conducive to infiltration, and so we will be proposing that. So from an environmental standpoint, we're doing our best to reduce impervious, promote infiltration of stormwater, and from an engineering standpoint, in terms of traffic, it's a very benign use and little impact to the intersection. There is obviously an increase in overall traffic, but that falls within, the general annual fluctuation or slight increases in traffic flow. And again, we meet all the dimensional requirements by zoning except for the open space requirement. We've done our best to show where we could do that work, provide access to the public, make it an open space that's accessible. The only way to make it fully compliant would be to do alterations to the wetlands or right on the edge, which would require additional permits. So we feel that we can accomplish the same goal with a slight reduction in providing that open space requirement. And then obviously we need a special exception for the use. But again, it's a benign use, and we feel that it's a very good project for the area.
Thank you.
So if I may please the board, I'll begin by going through the special exception criteria, and then I'll do the variance criteria, understanding that we're limited on time. So
Yes, please.
we'll get through this as quickly as possible. I appreciate it. First, the proposed use, which is a hotel, is permitted within the G1 district by special exception. Secondly, the proposed use as a hotel will not be a hazard to the public or adjacent property on account of potential fire, explosion, or release of toxic materials. No explosives or toxic materials will be used or stored at the proposed hotel, and the new building, will meet all life safety requirements. Third, no detriment to property values in the vicinity or change in the essential characteristics of any area, including residential neighborhoods or business and industrial districts, on account of the location or scale of buildings and other structures, parking areas, access ways, odor, smoke, gas, dust, or other pollutant, noise, glare, heat, vibration, or unsightly outdoor storage of equipment, vehicles, or materials. This project is somewhat unique because the zone just changed. And so we're trying to, in keeping with the neighborhood, also understand and meet the requirements of the G1 zone. The project is proposed in a dense commercial area with a number of similar larger scale hotels in the direct vicinity, consisting of the same or more rooms. Some have a few less than what is proposed, and I won't go through all of them. That's in my materials. The proposed hotel is certainly in keeping with the essential characteristics of the area, as it is in keeping with all hotels in the vicinity. Additionally, many of the parking spaces that will be utilized for this proposed project, as Alan already mentioned, will be shared or already exist. Fourth, there will be no creation of a traffic safety hazard or a substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity. What I can say, and what's already been stated, is that the traffic pattern as exists is not altered, so it will remain the same. And based upon Alan's analysis with the traffic, there will be no substantial increase in traffic whatsoever at this site. Fifth, no excessive demand on municipal services, including but not limited to water, sewer, waste disposal, police and fire protection, and schools will be caused by this proposed hotel. While this proposal will impact municipal services, undoubtedly, there will be no excessive demand on them. By right, the applicant has the ability to develop a portion of this lot in a manner that would cause significantly more of an impact on municipal services than what is proposed. Sixth and finally, the project will result in no significant increase in stormwater runoff onto adjacent property and streets. I believe Alan just addressed this, but using TF Moran, will be designing a comprehensive stormwater management plan, which will be developed, and any potential stormwater runoff will be appropriately mitigated and managed as to not cause additional runoff onto adjacent property and streets. That should complete the special exception criteria. I will then move on to the variance criteria, specifically as it relates to the roughly almost 8% community space when the zoning requirement is 10%. The first criteria, granting the variance, will not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the zoning ordinances or the public interest. In this instance, we're seeking relief that would neither alter the essential character of the neighborhood or threaten the public's health, safety, or welfare. To the contrary, actually, by adding this community space, we're looking to improve the public health, safety, and welfare by adding a considerable amount of community space while it not meeting the 10%. While in totality it is not the amount of community space required in this area of the G1 zone, it covers a substantial portion of our parcel without negatively impacting the wetlands. The zoning ordinance requires 10%, we're asking for 7.85%. Because this is a roughly 18-acre parcel of land, the addition of 61,759 square feet of community space will not alter the essential character of the locality, nor will it threaten the public health, safety, and welfare. Second criteria is substantial justice will be done in granting the variance. I list out the case law that talks about the balancing test, but there's no gain to the public by denying this variance request. In fact, a denial would be depriving the public of community space on this site. Without the request of relief, in order to meet the 10% community space requirement, the applicant would have to impact the Hodgson Brook and the wetlands. A denial of the requested relief would certainly be a significant loss to the applicant and to make reasonable use of the property. The next criteria is surrounding property values will not be diminished by granting the variance. Granting this variance request, as it specifically relates to open space or community space, would have no impact on the surrounding property values. The applicant is simply seeking to reduce the amount of community space required in this zone so as to not interfere with the wetlands. And the fifth criteria, literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. As I've stated ad nauseum at this point, the parcel contains over 18 acres of land in the G1 district. In this district, 10% of the site is required to be community space. That would mean, because our parcel is so large, that almost 80,000 square feet would need to be community space. The applicant is proposing here just about 62,000 square feet. This lot is unique and certainly distinguishable from other properties in the area for two reasons. First, the parcel is substantially larger than any of the surrounding properties. Secondly, and as depicted on the relief plan, a large portion of this premises is wetlands. Consequently, and because of the vast wetland coverage, this property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance for that 10% community space. And moreover, this proposed use is a reasonable one and allowed with a special exception. With that, I will conclude, and I'm happy to answer any questions should they arise.
Mr. Mann?
Thank you.
Mr. Mann.
Looking at that drawing up there and reading the key, the community space you're proposing starts off by the hotel, then wraps its way around the entire dealership?
The short answer to that is yes, sir. The community space is this dotted portion on the plan. So the community space would actually begin at the end of this crosswalk on Coakley Road. It would then extend down and around the L shape of the hotel. And then there would be another crosswalk here where the community space would actually begin here and wrap all the way around our property, continuing on through here. And admittedly, we invited all of the direct abutters to a community meeting some time ago, and we asked them what they thought about it. And some of the feedback we got surrounding the community space was that it would be great if this could make a loop and could extend back down so that whoever's accessing it could then sort of make a walking loop. And we've certainly entertained that consideration. I'm not sure for the sake of this application we'd have to specifically label it as community space, but we would certainly consider that through the planning process.
Okay. On the same map, you have the big teardrop that where it says proposed community space, you also have it listed as potential expansion spaces.
Sorry, I was clicking the wrong button. Are you referring to right here?
Yeah.
That is only designed to be community space. If
Okay, then my question
misleading
is-
if it's on the plan.
Again, on your map, it says potential expansion spaces
Oh, 50, yes.
to the right of that.
Second.
Oh, right there. That's misleading. That's untrue. So that will always be community space should this petition be approved.
You could consider adding that as a condition of approval, that's removed from the plan.
Excuse me?
Condition of approval. You could consider adding it.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be fine. We've shown that just in case we had to add parking for the future, but should the relief be granted, there'd be no need for those parking spaces.
Okay.
Well, yeah, but if you're proposing community space and right next to it says potential expansion spaces, that's on your proposal.
We understand the incongruity, but we'll remove that from the plan.
Thank you.
And we would certainly welcome that as a condition of approval.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, Ms. Marchison.
So going back to your statement about the traffic, the car dealership is going to be still existing on the site. You said with some minor modifications, you'll have an ingress and an egress. You'll use those to service the hotel. You're in front of TAC right now?
We have not gone before TAC yet.
Okay,
No.
so you need to demonstrate that there is no increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity. You're adding a 116-room hotel, where right now there is just a vacant lot.
That's correct.
I would submit to you that there will be a significant increase in the traffic congestion in the vicinity, and you need to demonstrate to us through a trip generation report what those numbers will be. And I think a statement that there will not be, frankly, for me, will not be sufficient. You know, a special exception is easier to get. However, you need to demonstrate that criteria. And frankly, you have not. A hotel is a 24/7 business. Again, it's allowed, you know, by special exception by zoning. I get that. But it is a 24/7 business. It's 116 rooms. I would expect, especially that you're adding it to this existing car dealership, you're going to see a lot more cars coming in and out of that lot.
To answer your question, I'm going to defer to Alan. I believe they have done a traffic analysis and can opine on the count.
Yeah, that's correct. You may not have seen the information, but we have done our own in-house analysis, especially for the uses that are allowed by right, when we compared it with the hotel. So, yes, we will be adding some traffic, but we will not be decreasing the level of service to the intersection. And the peak hours do not coincide for the use at the hotel with the way that the intersection operates.
Again, for me, I cannot speak for the board. I would really need to see those numbers.
Okay.
Understood.
And I think that's my last question.
You're done? Okay. Mr. Ram.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I also had the same concerns that Mr. Mantle brought up. Thank you, Mr. Mantle. So I'm trying to understand a couple things with your community space. One is, so our definition of community space that's in Article 5A is an area that is privately owned and oriented and accessible to the public and dedicated to public use, could have permanent deeded access to the city, and needs to conform to one of the types shown in Figure 10.5A4510. So there are a number of different ones. How are you saying that what you're proposing here constitutes a community space?
Sure. So admittedly, right, the idea behind the G1 district and the community space requirement is such that it would create more of a walking environment for folks that are entering Portsmouth. Our lot is somewhat unique in the sense that outside of our neighbors on Coakley Road, I'm not sure anybody from the public is going to drive there to park to access the community space. With that said, the hope is that they potentially would or could. And really what we'd like to do is be able to utilize this space for the Coakley Road residents. So the intent, sir, to answer your question with regard to what the community space is, the hope is that's going to be some type of walking trail that would be accessible to the public. And that's part of the reason that we started it where the Coakley Road entrance is to sort of hopefully incentivize people to begin to walk down there and utilize that community space. Again, our lot's uniquely situated where there's really no desire to go look at the traffic circle, but that's sort of the hand we were dealt, and so we're doing the best that we can in that sense.
So one of your arguments is one of the driving factors here is this wetlands area, yet a portion of your community space is within the 100-foot wetland buffer. Why, and you even talked about possibly extending it, which could bring you up to 10%, by making a complete circuitous route around the auto dealership. What is the reason why some of the community space in the wetland buffer makes sense, but other areas it does not?
My understanding is that the community space that's currently designed within the 100-foot wetland buffer is already previously disturbed area. And so in doing that, we stopped the community space from going into undisturbed wetland area.
Okay. And then lastly, again, you're saying your driving factor is that a good portion of my lot is taken up by wetlands. A good portion of your lot is also taken up by a car dealership. I'm trying to understand how, would there be potential changes to the, substantial room that the car dealership takes up to offer a more useful community space as part of the bargain for getting, yes, another structure on the property in the form of a hotel?
Sure. So some of the, and I appreciate the question, thank you. Some of the space that we've looked at here is obviously with an existing car dealership, we have a requirement for parking and display spaces, et cetera. And then when we looked at doing the hotel with the goals of the Gateway District sort of pushing the building out to the road and having the parking behind, we analyzed that it would be helpful to have some sort of shared parking and then have all the parking behind. One of the things we did add is on this sort of egress here out to Coakley Road, although it's minimal, we tried to add some green space there to help benefit. But really the parcel is, I guess, arguably maxed out, for lack of a better word, in terms of what we're allowed to do with the car dealership and then what we can fit for the hotel. So we're attempting to tastefully design this where we just miss the community space requirement because of the size of the lot without impeding on the wetlands.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
More questions? No? Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this petition? You may come up, one at a time, please.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Steve Workman. I'm the Director of Transport New Hampshire. Transport New Hampshire is a statewide advocacy and strategic innovation and problem solving for transportation statewide. My focus is on the most underserved, so choice of different transportation options, so public transit, community transportation, bike ped, and safe, efficient operation of our roads. The reason I'm here tonight is twofold, and for full transparency. So this is the sort of thing that I worry about throughout the state as I'm looking at projects and current situations on our roads and our highway system. But I grew up in the Coakley Road neighborhood. I'm a native son of Portsmouth. While I no longer live here, I still have an interest in the property as my mother lives there, and our estate, of course, is born in. So that's what brings me here tonight. But a long time ago, I was part of a movement to initially install the first signalized crosswalks at the Coakley Road intersection. And we worked hard for that. And there was a recognition that we had an isolated community in Coakley Road, and that the city itself was promoting biking and walking and other healthy lifestyles, and therefore needing to figure out how to make those safe connections was incredibly important. So as we look at this project, you've already addressed the traffic concerns on Route 1, and that's what this is really about at the end of the day. I've spoken with neighbors within the community, the Coakley Road community. It's not that anybody is against property owner rights, the rights of the business owner to try to find uses. The issue that I think this body and others in town have to consider is what is happening right now on the US Route 1 bypass, the Circle, and those two intersections, Coakley and Borthwick. I recognize that you have a certain amount of oversight that you do. But if each of our boards and councils in town only look at their thing, we may be missing the big picture. So my concern is this. I agree. To suggest that there is zero traffic impact, that just doesn't hold water. And an internal review of that type is fine, but there are professional ways, and you've got to show your work, actually, to let us actually see what you think those impacts are going to be. But at this point, one more car into that section is a problem. Recently, the Port Motor Inn was also seeking something, and as I understand, while they pulled their current proposal, that is not a dead proposal. So it's likely that this body and other bodies are going to come back and have to look at this as well. So at what point do we say our infrastructure is not safe or efficient enough to approve these projects, which otherwise we probably would not take issue with, or there'd be nuances like you've all raised already. And so I start to think about, okay, what do I know about our state government? Well, the first thing is that DOT has a 10-year transportation improvement plan, and that governs how we do road construction. The Coakley Road intersection and the circle are scheduled in the 10-year plan, one, to revisit the circle and make recommendations, and two, to eliminate the Coakley Road intersection, and then to put a connector road from Coakley Road further down that would connect to Borthwick. So this type of thing has to be done. We have created, with the Torrington property, we've created so much traffic going through there, both medical, buses, bicycle, pedestrian, and then users that are either passing through or accessing these individual properties. So that plan, if it is maintained in the 10-year plan, construction on that intersection would begin in 2031. That's 7 years out. So let me ask you something. If we were talking about sewer and said, well, it's going to be 7 years before we have the capacity to provide sewer for this development, would you approve it today? I suggest humbly that you probably wouldn't. You have to consider the impact. So is now the right time to look at projects like this, like the potential Port Motor Inn, that's going to further decrease the level of service, an official designation of that highway, and the safe, efficient operation? And so in those cases, I would urge you to consider that to extent that this board can. And I would also encourage you to make this more of a citywide discussion as you look for the congruence between your safety plans, your bike ped plans, and your overall quality of life that you're looking to promote with so many of the policies that Portsmouth has put into place. So I appreciate your time. And I hope that you will continue to look at this closely in other projects and weigh it against the greater good and not just those of a few individuals. Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak in opposition?
In the interest of time, if you guys want to form a line, that is also acceptable.
Hi,
Hello.
and thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Colleen Romano, and I am a homeowner on Coakley Road. And I have to tell you, provided by what Mr. Workman has just said and what the garage has said, I do have to oppose for what they said. I can't tell you the number of times I've almost physically got hit at that intersection. They will not stop for the lights regardless. They're running them. People are making illegal turns. It is a danger, and it really has to be addressed and taken up. We have young kids in our neighborhood that want to walk outside of Coakley Road and to use that crosswalk. To this day, I started that crosswalk, and it took me 6 years to do it because of the state owning it. And I had almost got hit before we got it. Finally, the state said, go ahead, put it in. Well, I'll tell you, to this day, I do not want to cross that crosswalk, even with the light, because they have turned with people inside the crosswalk with the light flashing. It is a danger. You are waiting for an accident, a severe one, and grant you, it's coming. They don't want to wait for the Coakley or the Borthwick lights at all. It is a disaster. I understand what the garage wants to do, and I don't oppose the hotel, but you have to look at the traffic study pronto. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board. My name is Christina Gallmeyer, also a homeowner on Coakley. Kind of to reiterate what everybody else said, the traffic is horrible. For them to say that during their peak hours that there is not a lot of traffic impact is the furthest thing from the truth. If you try to go anywhere near the hospital, Coakley, the traffic circle, between 3 and 6, forget about it. Your kids are trying to get home from school. They have to wait multiple lights to get through. When we let our kids go out and play in the street, we have to be mindful of the people that don't read the sign that says don't turn right and go into our neighborhood, because they come flying through the neighborhood testing their cars, or automotives that they're testing to make sure whatever they did works. And our kids have to constantly watch for someone coming over a hill that you're not going to see our kids in time. I have 2 small children, one of which is special needs. He has to take a special bus to and from school that stops right in front of our house. And to be able to have my kids have the life that we thought we were giving them when we purchased this house, something needs to be done about the traffic. That's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kristen Marquis. I live on Larry Lane, part of the Coakley neighborhood. As a mom of a 5-year-old, I wanted to mention the traffic issue. We have a lot of people already flying through our neighborhood, as she just said, testing their vehicles. I think that the community center that he speaks of, which technically already exists, we already use those green spaces for our walking our dogs and playing with our children. Where are those people going to park if they come just to use the community space? Are they going to park on Coakley? Where are those cars coming? When is check-in and check-out? Isn't that at 4 o'clock when the traffic circle is already very busy? I'm worried about the traffic, really. It's already very crazy. And then in the morning when we're trying to get to work, kids are trying to get to school. We all know what that traffic is like. So I just think those are fair arguments to bring up. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening. Thomas Morley, also a homeowner in Coakley Road neighborhood. Definitely echo the pieces about traffic and transportation concerns at this intersection. It is a problem. I bike through that intersection, and it is scary. The neighborhood's changing too. We have younger families. We mentioned about kids in the neighborhood and people who do want to cross that intersection safely and want to be walking on Coakley, walking in active transportation in this area. And yeah, the way the traffic is now is not safe for us. But I wanted to speak to the point about the variance for reduced community space and just reiterate the point I think has already started to been made, that it's not open space, that it truly should be the requirements for community space. And as presented in this plan, those areas already exist. It's grass, it's already there. It's not community space, it's not active, it's not being used by the neighborhood other than maybe where the proposed building is. That's a large grassy area like people could use for their dogs. But really, to the point, no one is going to be coming here from the public, from the city for the most part. So the community space, we hope and we asked of the developer, would be oriented towards the neighborhood. That's where the walking path, kind of the circuitous route around, hopefully could come into play. We talked about, or it was talked about the impact to the wetlands that already is proposed. If this were to go forward, to see the community space really be more fleshed out, better designed, rather than it just being the dots. Is it a path? What does it look like? Is it lighted? Could we actually use it? And then also, if they want this reduction, I would propose that potentially a sidewalk could be added on Coakley Road, where there already is the beginnings of it, on this applicant's property, further down, headed towards Hodgson Brook, a sidewalk could be added in that place as well to add some more community space without impacting the wetlands too significantly. Yeah, again, we hope that the neighborhood, if this were to go forward, could get something out of the development. The city could get something. The public could get actual, true community space rather than what already exists. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and Board. My name is Bregan Johnson, 92 Coakley Road. I would just like to also reiterate the traffic concerns. I have 2 kids, 14 and 11. They're some of the older kids in the neighborhood. I do not let my kids near that intersection. I can't tell you how frequently we have people run the intersection. I've been at the intersection with my kids in the car and seen people blow right through it, nearly hitting others who are trying to cross the street on a green light. It's constant. I ran into somebody recently who works at the building across the street. I think they're in the dental office there. Reiterated the same thing. They said all the time, we are terrified of that intersection. So I hope that you all take that into consideration, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak to, for, or against?
Good evening. My name is Dan Bernier. I live at 96 Coakley Road. Thank you for your time, and thank them for the meeting that we had earlier in the month. My big thing, again, is traffic, but the other point is people from Route 1 South go through the dealership, come out onto Coakley Road. Okay, now if that intersection at Coakley Road and Route 1 is going to be closed, people are not, how are they going to come out and go north? They can't until they do the road between, I guess, Coakley and Borthwick. That's going to be an issue. Again, I've seen many cars come through that intersection. Again, I saw an accident happen. There was a car trying to turn left on Cottage. The guy didn't want to wait. He went around him and ended up hitting a car turning left to come in, actually into the dealership to deliver parts. So again, it's not just the traffic. It's people coming through that intersection, not wanting to wait for the light, go through the dealership, cut over, go to the Port Inn. Okay, we've seen it. We just want to make you guys aware of that it is not a safe intersection, and we know the state probably has to do the numbers on that. So I appreciate your time, and again, considering that if that throughway goes from Coakley to Borthwick, how are they going to get across? So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Rice, and I live on Coakley Road. And I'm not going to go more into the traffic because that's wicked. But also when we had the community meeting,
I'm sorry,
and
can
they
you
were
speak
talking.
into the mic?
Oh, I'm sorry.
For our minutes.
Oh, that's not the mic this is.
No, that is.
Oh, that is,
Yeah.
okay.
But you were wandering.
Did I put it down, maybe?
Yeah.
Anyways, so with this hotel that's going to be built, and which doesn't, there also, they mentioned there will be food and beverages served. So you're more traffic coming, so you're gonna, they don't have enough parking spaces already for the motel without taking some from the dealership that's always filled with cars anyways, unless the dealership's gonna have fewer cars now. But then you're gonna have people coming in for drinks, for food. You're gonna have, if your drinks, you're gonna have food. So people are gonna be looking to park for there, plus putting more traffic in the area. It just doesn't seem to make much sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last call. Drinks. Anyone else to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Then the public hearing is closed. I would like to propose that perhaps we might want to refer this to TAC before we tackle it, so that we can get some of the information that we seem to need to make this decision. Just something to consider. Because I know I'm feeling that I want better numbers. I mean, I don't know. There are numbers, but then there are percentages. Is the traffic going to change 3%, 15%, 20%? I feel like I'd like to know more about this, and this is one of our options. Okay. Ms. Murchison.
I feel somewhat conflicted by that because I do believe it is the applicant's responsibility to bring that information to us. When we were considering the one for Port Inn within the special exception criteria, and this was just in January, they included information from the ITE parking manual, and they also included information on the earlier application from the trip generation reports that they had submitted to TAC. So I do believe that we need more information, but I also do believe, and this respectfully, there's a very sophisticated applicant, that this was something that they needed to bring to us initially, because it is their burden to prove that there is not a substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity. So, I mean, those are just my thoughts.
Can I address?
Yes, please do.
Ms. Margison, we can also request that they present that to the board. It's not a required piece of information. I would assume that's why they didn't submit it in this process, but they seem to have it available, and it can be requested by the board that it's submitted to the board.
It's up to the board.
Yeah, I'm just letting you know that's an option.
Mr. Mann.
I'm going to make a motion to deny the special exception and also the variance requests. And if I get a second, I will speak to it.
I'm not going to second. I just feel like we need more discussion. So that's my
More
reason for that.
discussion? Yes,
So-
Mr.
I would like to have more discussion before a motion as well, so I don't know.
Then I'll withdraw the motion and just speak to it. As presented, I can't support either request for special exception on the variance. This board does approvals based upon what is presented. The fact that you presented a map that shows the community space that also is listed at potential expansion spaces, granted, it may be a mistake, but I have to take that as what you presented. It also seems that your community space is basically whatever property is left over after you've done your hotel. When your hotel could easily fit on the other side of the lot, on the other side of the dealership, where all that nice dry land is. And I kind of find it disingenuous that you're using the special exception to propose a hotel that comes with a 10% community space, but you don't have the space to do it because it's a 10% requirement. One of the things I don't like about the conditions, 10% community space, 10% this, 20% that, is as soon as the city of Portsmouth makes those ordinance changes, they start coming back for variances to not provide them. I mean, why make the ordinance that way? If you put the hotel on the other side and your nice, green lot at the corner of Coakley Bypass would make an excellent community space if you had a smaller hotel. That being said, you provided no traffic studies. We're supposed to take your word for it when clearly the residents have a problem with the traffic. Yeah. They said they do an outreach to the community. Obviously, they didn't get a lot of positive feedback from the community because, there's approximately 50 houses in the Coakley Road community. My concern was everybody in Coakley Road and Larry Lane notified? So
Public hearing is over.
that's where I'm at right now.
Mr. Neese.
I won't elaborate, but I am also concerned about the lack of really any information that supports the claim that there will not be an impact on traffic. I just think that is difficult to believe that there's not going to be any impact. The earlier proposal that was withdrawn included a traffic study. I was hoping we were going to get a chance to discuss it because I had numerous questions about some of the conclusions that were drawn in that study.
That was a different project.
That was a different, I know, that was a different
Okay,
proposal,
just
but
wanna
it was,
make sure.
it was the same intersection.
Yes.
It was also different because that proposal included a restaurant, and this one does not, as I understand it. So that could be
Right, no
a key thing here. But my point is that there were things that were brought up in that study that I would have liked to have been able to discuss had we had the information for this study, and we don't have it. The other thing that concerns me more than the difference between 10 and 8% community space is the quality of the community space. The Gateway District says, we're trying to create quality places by allowing for whole site development with meaningful public spaces and neighborhood centers. It's difficult for me to look at a green strip along the traffic circle and call that a meaningful public space. And as Mr. Rayum brought up, it isn't clear how any of these spaces meet or are consistent with the guidelines in the zoning ordinance about what community space is supposed to look like. And so I'm concerned about that as well.
Further discussion? Oh, I didn't see that. Yes, Mr. Ram.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not to pile on too badly, but continuing on with the community space piece, the planning board will see this in site plan review. Should it actually make it that far, they would have the ultimate determination as to is this really meeting the definition of community space. That said, the applicant's argument for saying I can only give you 7.5 versus 10 is that there's the wetlands. Well, really, it's that there is already an existing very land-intensive use on this property, and they want to add in another very land-intensive use on this property. That's really what's contributing to their inability to give the 10%. So I think from that perspective, I don't see why we should give a variance there. If this was a virgin site, they were trying to put something on it, there hadn't been anything there before, and the vast majority of the site was undisturbed land and they want to keep it that way, I would say that there's an alternate public benefit that you could perceive by them not disturbing such land. But in this case here, it's really, none of that is what's driving this request. And then pertaining to the traffic study, I do think it is really important that we understand that in more detail. It is not obvious that there is no traffic impact. We made it the same point about the proposals right across the street. There is the complicating factor here of the future changes to Copley Road. We know that there's concepts and a plan, in essence, to eventually block it off, make it so that you can't make a left-hand turn. How does that impact what they're proposing to do here? With the connector road that goes between Coakley and Borthwick, again, how would that traffic ultimately look? What does it look like in the current circumstances, which are already very tight in that area, and you have another, some further development of the property across the street. You're adding a lot of traffic to that one little section of Coakley Road. Future plan, does it make it better? Does it make it worse? When would that happen? All of those are factors that I think do play into the special exception. That said, I guess the question would be is do we have are we going to have a hard line here where we say, you know what, your representation is a paid attorney and some really good engineering support services. Why weren't they thinking that this would be necessary information for this board to consider and say we're going to deny it based off of their failure to do that? Or would we, do something as has been suggested to give the applicant another opportunity to provide the information that we are looking for, which may or may not convince us that that particular criteria is met. So I think that's kind of what we have for a question before us is, are we going to hold a hard line, or are we going to give an opportunity to provide that additional information?
Further discussion?
I would only comment that I've been intrigued to see proposals come before us as this area has been rezoned as a gateway district, and knowing what the objectives of the G1 district are, one of them being to promote a high-quality pedestrian environment. I do not think this proposal even comes close to doing that. I don't have the imagination or the skills to make any recommendations about how to get there, but this is not it.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess I'll just share my thoughts.
Please.
I guess In no particular order, I do slightly buy the argument that this is like a huge property and there's a lot of wetlands, so the 10% is slightly misleading, but the community space proposed just is not very useful at all. And as Mr. Yum said, a lot of it is also due to the other existing intensive use on the property. And for traffic, I mean, I personally avoid this area at certain times just because the traffic is so bad as it currently is. But yeah, I guess I would be more comfortable voting after having the information as opposed to just voting no before having that information.
I would also want to do the soft approach, as Mr. Rayam put it. I would like to give the developers an opportunity to come back with more information so that if ultimately we do get something that we could approve, we're not in a Fisher versus Dover situation, which means if you come back with the same application, we don't have to hear it again. There has to be substantial change, which may or may not happen. So for me, I guess I would like to refer and wait to see what we get. I realize that's not the only issue, but it's a substantial issue. And I'm not sure where the Gateway new zoning thought that there would be pleasant walks along Route 95 or the traffic circle or the bypass. So I would be curious to see how that might happen. So, yes.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think we should break this up into two pieces. So I would first propose to deny the variance request.
Second.
Second.
Okay, thank you. To have a denial, the request needs to fail on one criteria. It could potentially fail on more. I do think that it's failing here on two of our criteria. One is granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. The other is goes to the unnecessary hardship criteria that we have. So I think in terms of the spirit of the ordinance, I know that this property only just recently got rezoned, but it is part of a vision that the city is trying to create in this area. And part of it is the walkability and sort of, requiring these properties to be more integrated into the community that we recognize that we have at Coakley Road. And admittedly, it is kind of an offshoot, but there is some opportunities here to use this more in a community manner to help support that area as opposed to just remaining as a general business and really just for remaining a sterile strip along the Route 1 bypass. So within that vision, the idea is to make some truly useful community space. Our ordinance, I think, lays it out pretty well. I think what's being proposed here doesn't fall into that. But more importantly, there's no reason why they can't make the 10% if there was some other proposed use or some other reconfiguration of what's being done here. I think there is a more useful opportunity and an opportunity to meet the full 10%. And then again, to the hardship criteria, the applicant has said the hardship is really being driven by the wetlands. I think it's really being driven here by the intensity of existing and proposed uses, which is not really, that's not a unique characteristic of the property. It's simply something that the applicant wants to go and do, and they're trying to sort of shoehorn in the ability to meet this new requirement around it. So with that, I believe it fails those two criteria and should be disapproved.
Does the second have anything to add?
I agree with everything Mr. Rayom said. It seems to me, looking at the map, that the community space is basically what was left over. I don't consider a 30-foot wide green border with a split rail fence running down the middle of it, bordering the traffic circle, as, viable community space. And I will support the motion.
I'm sorry that I was talking.
Yes.
It's
I was
okay.
very
I'm
distracted.
over.
I'm sorry. Business. Okay. Is there discussion before we vote to deny the variance?
So a yes is
A
denying.
yes is denial.
Thank you.
I guess I'm still torn about this because denying the variance would disallow us, I think, to move ahead on some other things that might have solutions. So while I think the variance, man, there's a lot going on here, but I guess I do think that the wetlands is truly a hardship, and it does disallow some or a lot of flexibility. So I'm not sure I'm going to support this, because I guess I want to keep other options open. But, Mr. Neese,
Want to make sure. A yes means deny the variance?
a yes means deny.
Yes.
Are you calling the vote?
I am calling a vote. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Yes.
I'm calling a vote. Mr. Neese has
Yes.
spoken. Mr. Mannel.
Yes.
Ms. Margison.
Yes.
Mr. Rayam.
Yes.
Mr. Rossi.
Yes.
Mr. Mattson.
Yes.
I'm going to vote no, and it is denied. The variance is denied. So now we have the special exception to deal with, whether we take a soft or hard approach or something different.
I make a motion to deny special exception.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay. As Ms. Margison said, it's incumbent upon the applicant to present an application that addresses all the criteria. Saying there's not going to be any traffic impact doesn't cut that, especially what we've already been through with the Meadowbrook. So, that being said, under 10.233.24, no creation of a traffic safety hazard or a substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity, they fail. So on that basis, the special exception should be denied. Others can find other things to deny it for, but they only need to fail on one of them. Looking at the map, it concerns me, while the chair recognizes the wetlands are a hardship, is there's approximately 60 spaces of paved parking area inside the 100-foot wetland buffer. Now, I don't know when that variance or whatever was granted, but as much as they may have a concern for the wetlands, I think they have less concern for the people of Coakley Road, seeing that that nice green area where the hotel fits at the corner of Coakley Route 1 bypass looks like it could easily fit on the other side of the dealership, and that would make a very nice community space at the corner of Coakley and the Route 1 bypass. But in any event, since I believe there's going to be an impact on the traffic, especially for the Coakley Road residents, and there's nothing in the application packet that says it won't, that's why I requested a denial.
So my second would be the other
The other four?
comments about
Okay.
the creation of the community space are not relevant to this. This is the special exception. I also do think that it fails on the same criteria of the special exception. There is absolutely going to be an increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity. The applicant has failed to provide us any data on that. This is a new use, which is allowed by special exception, on land that is undeveloped. And therefore, you're going to see a level of, an increase in the level of traffic congestion in an area that is particularly problematic for it, which is right just past the Portsmouth traffic circle. So I would also vote to deny.
Mr. Mattson.
I'll just say I share the exact same concerns, and my personal experience there is that the traffic is bad, and that I suspect that this would create excessive traffic. But I think that I would like to actually see results one way or the other, so I would be inclined as much as I potentially agree with it, I'd be inclined to deny this, or to vote against this motion.
Mr. Ram?
Yeah, I'll say the same. I will also vote against the motion. Not that I necessarily think that this is a winning proposal here in terms of its traffic, but that said, we are making the assumption that it will not meet our criteria. I'm extremely irritated that the applicant who's coming before us, I think should have been better prepared, should have provided this board the information that it needed right up front to be able to make this decision. But that said, I don't think it's fair to deny the special exception on the assumption that the traffic is to such a magnitude that it triggers a special exception denial. That is, special exceptions are not of an extremely high bar. It's an allowed use. We're just looking to ensure that there is no excessive impacts, and to be able to just blanket say that that is the case, I don't think we have the information one way or the other. I would have expected that to have been provided. It was not. I'm irritated, but that doesn't translate into a denial at this point.
Mr.
Can I ask a process question? If the special exception is denied, is it possible to come back again for a hotel use, or would that automatically trigger Fisher v. Dover if it was a different proposal? Does Fisher v. Dover even apply as special exception?
That's a really good question, and I'd have to check with the legal department on that.
It's kind of an important question because
It hasn't come up before.
Yeah.
Before this board.
Huh.
It is my understanding that, it does, but I haven't been able to get an answer on that.
You don't know, do you?
Not definitively, no, sorry.
But thanks for asking.
Good question.
I would say I was going to support the motion to deny, but without knowing the answer to my question, I'm reluctant to do that.
Mr. Neese?
Does the board ever entertain substitute motions?
I suppose if our original motion maker would.
No, it says.
I think we have to vote
See
on this
this through?
through. Yeah. There's a motion on the table.
Am I not understanding what a substitute motion is?
One motion at a time.
Technically, a substitute motion allows two motions on the floor at a time when there's a clear differentiation between the two motions. But if the board has not done that before, now is not the time to try.
Probably not, but thank you. I agree with what Mr. Ram and with what Mr. Mattson said, that it talks about a substantial difference in traffic, and while increase in traffic. And while that seems very likely, I think I would like to know more about this before making a denial. And it would have been nice to have the information, but I don't hold a grudge. Let's see if we can find out. So I would, yes.
Okay, I just want to speak to my second. The representation from the applicant was that there would not be a substantial increase in traffic.
Right,
and that is why I am voting against that, because it's not just the lack of information, but I think we're allowed to rely on our common sense and inferences, and there will be an increase. It's not right to say that there will not be an increase in traffic.
I want to get it from I guess I'd like to hear it from the people whose job it is to decide that, talk about that in the city. Yes.
Yeah, and while I feel Mr. Ram's irritation, but I feel it's also incumbent upon the applicant to provide that information. If he does not do that and just makes a blanket statement, okay, and we've seen this before by applicants making blanket statements as far as traffic, home valuation, whatever, with just their say-so. I think that calls for denial. I do not think this board should be rewarding incomplete applications. Okay, just like the little remark that's on his application up there, oh, we're taking that off. Well, yeah, you should have done that.
Okay, let's vote. A no vote. Okay, wait, the motion
Yes
is a
vote.
yes vote denies. A yes vote denies. Mr. Neese,
Yes.
Mr. Mannell,
Yes.
Ms. Margerson,
Yes.
Mr. Rayum,
No.
Mr. Rossi,
Yes.
Mr. Mattson,
No.
and the chair votes no, so it is denied. Okay,
Can we take?
yes.
Can I
we
do
are
David's
going-
little hand signal?
We are going to take a 10-minute break.
Clarify the result of that.
The application was denied. Variance and special exception. We are back in session, and the next item of business is item C, only the third letter in the alphabet, the request of Daisy L. and Bert J. Wordle, owners, for property located at 245 Marcy Street. Whereas relief is needed to remove the existing 6-foot fence and replace with a new 6-foot fence, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.515.13 to allow a 6-foot fence in the front yard where 4 feet is allowed. Said property is located on Assessor Map 103, Lot 13, and lies within the General Residence B and Historic Districts. Hello, good evening.
Good evening, members of the board, Madam Chair. My husband and I purchased 245 Marcy Street last year, and the same year, apparently a young man came, hit the fence, which is right at the corner, and Miss Stephanie, can you please put photo number 6?
Give me 1 second.
So our fence was hit, and all we want to do is replace it like for like. We can just replace the post and some of the panels there are broken, but we don't want to do that because we want everything to look uniform and pretty. And we want to do landscaping in the front and just, update the house to look nice, but continuing with the historical aspect of it. So if you look at this photo, you will see right here, these posts are broken. And then in the middle, these panels are also very loose because they came loose from the post. So I can replace the post, but it's not going to look as nice as if I replaced the entire fence. So that is one of the things. The other issue is that we would like to keep it the same height because if, Miss Stephanie, if you can please put photo number, sorry, I had them all organized. Number 5, and you will see that our bulkhead is right next to the property line. So if we were to, no, the number 5, which just shows this one right here.
2 photos before. 2 photos before.
It shows the inside of the property.
Okay.
Oh, that's, I labeled them in the bottom.
Oh, I see. Sorry, yours are numbered differently than mine.
Yes.
That's it.
One more. Well, that's fine. That's fine. So if you can see, our bulkhead is right. This thing is not working. Our bulkhead is right there next to the fence. So if we were to move our fence back, we will have to actually move it 10.5 feet to clear this window, and then we will lose all of our yard, which will only have about this little bit. In addition to that, our fence is set back exactly 13.5 inches, and it's right near our electrical panel, and we would like to, if you allow us and grant us to keep the fence like that, if we can just align the fence to our property line so that we can have access to update the panel, because apparently we need space to do that. So that's one of the issues and the reason why we have to keep it that way. Now, another issue is that if we go on Gardner's side, we will have to remove, Miss Stephanie, can you please put photo number 4? We will have to remove 2 small trees and a large tree in order to do that one. In order to move our fence back, we will have to remove this big tree, and these 2 little trees that are here, and then we will have to basically set our fence back more than the 5 feet that is allowed. So our fence basically goes in an angle, but the middle of the fence, which is in the original photo that I had shown you, which is photo number 6, you will see that part that is in the middle is set back 13 feet from the property line, and the other ones will be
along the side of the property line. So if you come up from Garner Street and you want to make a right onto Marcy Street, there's no obstruction of the traffic at all to be able to make a right or make a left. So the side triangle. So we would like to replace it like for like. We have provided a packet which you have seen already. The fence will not be contrary to public interest, no obstruction to pedestrian or vehicle traffic. The spirit of the ordinance will be like for like. The fence protects our property from break-ins. We don't live here all the time. This is just like a part-time home for us. And then if you saw the photo of the bulkhead, we get basically vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic all night, all day. Saturdays and Sundays is extremely noisy. You can get motorcycle traffic, vehicle traffic, the delivery trucks, and it becomes very noisy, and we will not have any privacy. The values surrounding the property will not be diminished. They will be enhanced. The literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in the safety issue. The literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance will result in a safety issue to our property by exposing the bulkhead of the basement and a busy road on Marcy Street when we don't live here. The loss of our trees, the loss of our timber raised bed that provides also privacy to our backyard, and the loss of our yard. I really hope that the pictures that I have provided will show you what a loss it will be for us if we were to remove the fence, set it back, or either lower it to 4 feet.
Other questions? Mr. Ram?
Thank you. This has to go before the Historic District Commission. Where are you at in that process?
So yes, I did speak to Isaac, and Isaac said that it would just have to come in front of you, that they will not, if it's like for like, it will be okay.
Okay, because I guess just a clarification on the staff report, you said HDC review is required, no?
If it's in kind, then
okay.
it's okay. It gets an exemption form. If it's not, then it will need to go before the board. I don't think I knew it was in kind at the time that I wrote that, but if that's what the applicant is saying, then that's
Okay.
not correct.
And my second question is, so, and I fully understand your reasoning for wanting to have the higher fence maintained in the location that you have it, kind of replacing it. That said, one of the reasons why we created this ordinance back some years ago is to reduce the feeling like you have sort of a wall effect created by a tall fence right up against a public way of some sort. And I understand you're particularly burdened because you're considered a corner lot. Therefore, the 4-foot rule applies to two sides of what you have, not just one side. But
Excuse me.
I'm looking to have you help me to understand, why do you think, from the public's perspective, and we weigh your needs versus what the public is trying to get out of the ordinance, what do you think in the public is something that would say that negative effect of the wall, so this wall right along the side of the sidewalk and road, is not as impactful for your property?
So there's only two walls that we're discussing, the one on Marcy Street and then the one on Gardner Street. The fence has been like that forever, and I don't think it has had any impact. Or I asked all of the neighbors if it bothered them, if it was okay, and they said it's not a problem. I understand what you're saying as far as I don't think we're affecting the public. I think if anything, we're getting protection to our property, and we're getting privacy, because Marcy, we didn't know that before we purchased the home, but it's very noisy, and there's a lot of traffic, vehicle traffic and pedestrian traffic, especially on the weekends when they have events in Prescott Park and Strawberry Bank. You get all that traffic of all these people that some of them don't even live in the area, walking around the houses looking, because this is a historical area and it's beautiful. People want to walk around, but you may have the people that do want to walk around and look at it, and then you may have the people that are looking for an opportunity to break in, and our house is empty most of the time.
Okay,
Did
thank
that
you.
answer? Yes, go ahead, Ms.
So,
Marchison.
I live in the neighborhood. I live just further down on Marcy Street, and I've passed by this property numerous times. And I will say respectfully, it has always looked walled off and barriered to me. I think the concerns that you have are the concerns that we all have on Marcy Street. And I think that your concerns and your needs are not necessarily unique, and the property is not necessarily unique. I think one of the issues about living in a historic area is that people do want to see it and see the houses, and sometimes they do peer in. And I think that in this instance, and the way it is and the way that it's placed, and I've thought this from forever, is that it does create a barrier, which is exactly what this ordinance was intended to prevent. And I think in this area, I'm not sure how many other places could have a fence in front of it just because everything's so close to the road. But I think that it is very problematic in this area to have a fence that tall. So, I mean, those are my comments. I don't particularly have a question. I don't particularly think that there is a hardship here.
Madam Chair, point of order, are we discussing this
Yeah,
amongst the
no,
board?
no.
Or
No.
are we discussing with the applicant? I'm confused.
So I want to get your thoughts on why a 4-foot fence would not be sufficient for privacy.
Well, like I said, Marcy Street is very noisy. You get traffic, vehicle and pedestrian traffic all day. Our bulkhead will be exposed, and it's a safety issue for us more than anything. And I think that we have a very valid point that our bulkhead is exposed, and we don't live here. We live in Miami.
Okay, thank you.
And may I say one more thing? I know it looks horrendous, and I promise you that that corner is going to be, the gardening that I'm going to do is going to be unbelievable. And I don't know if you've already seen it. We got hydrangeas in it there, and we're trying to work it. It's going to look
take
great.
this meeting back, okay? Mr. Rossi has a question for you.
Thank you. Should you be denied the variance, what would you do with this fence?
If I am denied, I would just change the post, and then it's not going to look uniform.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Stephen Houlihan. I live in 17 Gardner, which is next door neighbors to them on Gardner Street. And we moved in 2016, and that fence is, I don't know how long that fence has been there. It's been there forever. And she is correct that the fence was run into by a very bad driver who somehow managed to smash the fence. And they didn't really fix it. They just kind of propped it up. And it perhaps, I understand your concern, but it doesn't block the house. The full view of the house is there as you're walking down Marcy Street. You walk up over the hill, the house is there, the fence runs along the property, and then you see the house. You turn right onto Gardner, the fence is on the left, you go about 25 feet, you see the backyard. So it really doesn't prevent anybody from seeing the property or the houses. So I support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone in opposition? Anyone to, for, or against? Okay. Then public hearing is closed. And what would we like to do? Yes.
I'm sure I'll provide some discussion, I guess. I appreciate the applicant's situation, understand that this is the result of, something that was out of their control. I mean, over time, the fence is going to deteriorate one way or another. The question here is when that time comes, whether it's today or someday in the future, should it be replaced with a fence of the same height? you know, we have a lot of these cases that come before us, and most of the time I've argued that, hey, this fence is, you know, not what we were trying to prevent. It's often some, you know, fairly distant area. It's away from a walking path. It's set back far enough. It's okay because of some change in elevation. All those things were true in those cases. In this particular case, I do think that we created the ordinance for a reason, and I think it's for exactly what this applicant's current situation is, which is that this is a very high fence that is right up against walking paths and right up against the street, and it creates a walled-off feel to the property. Now, I understand, you know, a desire to have privacy. There are actual multiple ways of generating that as well. Again, the applicant has talked about using some green elements that could supplement a shorter fence to provide some additional privacy, but in a way that's not this, you know, compound kind of effect. And that's certainly a potential option for a future replacement whenever it occurs of this fence that would provide the kind of thing that putting this in the ordinance was specifically intended to go and do. I empathize fully. I also am on a corner lot. I also have 4-foot fences. It presents some privacy challenges, but that said, it is part of our city living, and you know, through some selective use of some green elements, I think we've created the level of privacy that we need. You know, the concern about the safety of the home, I think there's multiple ways that someone would determine that you're not home or not home. There's still an open area to this. It's not going to prevent somebody from coming in and doing whatever that they would need to you know, to do something nefarious toward the home. Certainly, home security systems, cameras, et cetera, are all, you know, perfectly fine options that are available today to be able to go and provide home security. So I'm not buying that as an argument either. So those are my thoughts.
Anybody?
I'll add a further comment. I don't think that we can approve the variance within the context of how we interpret the ordinance. However, smarter philosophers than I am will recognize, I don't quite know how to pronounce it, it's the ship of Theseus, right? I mean, this fence will be replaced one board at a time. It will stay exactly as it is, but it won't be the same fence 10 years from now. It just will be there. It can exist in perpetuity without any variance from us. So our actions here are somewhat inconsequential. However, we should remain true to our purpose.
Is that a motion?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Why, thank you.
I move that we deny the variance request.
Is there a second?
I will second.
You will second. Okay.
Unless David wanted to.
Your motion, please.
So in order to deny a variance, the variance application must fail on only one element. And I would say that that element in this case is 10.233.22, that granting a variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. As Mr. Rayum has pointed out, the purpose of the ordinance is explicitly to prevent walled-off feel for people who are walking in areas that the town has decided are, you know, designated as areas we want pedestrians to feel comfortable in. And this is one such area. It does not comply with the spirit of the ordinance to have a 6-foot fence there. Like Mr. Rayum, I also am not sympathetic to the security arguments. A 6-foot stockade fence is not a security device, and it never will be. So I don't think that there is a substantial justice argument either in this case. So I believe it fails on those two counts, possibly others, but I think that's sufficient.
Does the second have anything to add?
My only second would be to state that, you know, I do think that it fails very much on the spirit of the ordinance. The barrier, the like feeling that Mr. Rayum referenced is exactly what is happening with this property right now. And to allow it to continue, especially in this area, I think is very much against the spirit of the ordinance. So I support the motion to deny.
Yes, Mr. Neese.
I've got a question for...
Oh, I'm sorry, I just...
Stephanie.
Okay.
the 6-foot fence criteria, is that only for the fence that faces Marcy Street? Or does it affect Gardner Street too, because it's a corner lot?
It is both in the front yard area, for which this property has two, a primary and a secondary. Primary on Marcy, secondary on Gardner.
But
within the front yard area, a 4-foot fence is allowed. Anything above that in height requires a variance.
Okay, but the fence at the back of her property, they can replace that, don't need a variance.
As long as it's 6 feet or under, yes.
Okay, so the 6-foot fence at the back of the property, they can replace right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Neese.
I'll oppose the motion. I don't think there's any loss to the public by allowing this 6-foot fence to be replaced. It exists now. This is an area where many of the buildings are right on the sidewalk. And so effectively, we've got walls right along the sidewalk, all along Marcy Street. There are other properties in the area, notably on Hancock Street, which have similar 6-foot fences along the street. I don't see that this is changing the essential character of the neighborhood at all. And I don't think it's inconsistent with the spirit of the ordinance. I think the loss to the applicant is outweighed by any public benefit by enforcing the ordinance here. The loss in privacy, the loss in the ability to enjoy their yard when they are here, I think is vastly outweighs any benefit to the public by requiring them to have a lower fence in this part of the lot.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Mann?
I also won't be supporting the motion. The fence is already there, it's falling apart. Even with a 4-foot fence, the property owner is still going to have a loss of privacy simply because she cannot connect. The 4-foot fence can get connected to the house, but that's where her electrical panel is, that's where her basement access is. So that there is not going to be any arborvitae or green or anything there to prevent, as she said, any pedestrian walking through the thing. They're looking for historic houses, not historic yards. And, privacy is at a premium in the South End. I get it. I get the spirit and intent of the ordinance. But I haven't heard any public outcry for taking down a fence, especially from the residents of the South End. So I will not be supporting the the motion.
I don't know why I'm finding this so difficult. I think it does, but however, I think it comes down to very specifically, we don't allow 6-foot fences in front of buildings in certain areas of town, and this is a long 6-foot fence, so I think I'm going to have to, no, you may not. I'm sorry, it's closed. So I think I will not be able to allow this. So, the motion is
The motion is to deny.
the motion is to deny. So a yes vote denies. Okay. Mr. Neese?
No.
Mr. Mano?
No.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rossi. I like to shake it up.
Yes.
Okay. And I am going to say yes as well. And so the fence is denied.
But like the ship of Theseus, it will stand forever.
We'll see. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, the next item of business is item D, Thomas Kressler, owner for property located at 34 Garfield Road. Whereas relief is needed to construct a single-story addition to the front of the existing home, which requires the following. 1, variance from section 10.521 for A, 24% building coverage where 20 is allowed, and B, a 24.5 front yard where 30 feet is required, and 2, variance from section 10.321 to allow a nonconforming building or structure to be extended, reconstructed, or enlarged without conforming to the requirements of the ordinance. Said property is located on Assessor Map 268, Lot 84, and lies within the Single Residence B District. Is there anyone to speak to this?
Yes, good evening. Attorney Richard Russo for Tom Kressler and Lisa Lapierre. It's 34 Garfield Road. The property is located in the Single Residence District B. The owners are seeking variances here to allow a small 13 by 14 foot single-story addition to their master bedroom. Particularly, they're seeking variances to allow said addition to be constructed within the 30-foot front setback. This would result in a 24.5-foot setback where 30 feet is required. Additionally, they're seeking a variance for a slight expansion of a non-conforming structure with regards to the building coverage. 20 is the maximum allowed in this district, and we are seeking allowance for 23.8%. This is a 2 percentage point increase from the current, which is 21.8. The property is unique in that the lot is particularly small for this district. The house is also particularly small. It's 1,061 square feet. And that house is sandwiched tightly within the setbacks. And additionally, there is a wetland behind the property, which means that almost the entirety of the property is encompassed by the wetland buffer. So essentially, any type of activity requires a variance or approval from a land use board. The addition as proposed would be located in the front corner of the property on the opposite side of the garage. That's essentially the farthest away from the wetlands as possible, and it does not move the primary structure closer to their neighbors. I would note that the house is small and there's currently only one bathroom for this family. So the addition would add a master bathroom and a closet, which is much needed for the residents. Building upward did not seem to be a viable option in this particular case, given one of the homeowners does have some back issues and stairs were going to be difficult. And they do want to grow into this home as they age, and again, stairs are not productive to that. One of the reasons they bought this property was because it was a single-story ranch-style home, which if you go through the neighborhood, there are a number of them, and it's consistent with the neighborhood. So to knock off the factors here, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. The addition would only result in a minor 5.5-foot encroachment on the setback, leaving 24.5 feet of setback, and that 24.5 feet setback is only for the 14-foot span of the addition. The rest of it is normal 30-foot setback. The building coverage ratio is only increased by 2 percentage points from what currently exists to 3.8% maximum, which leaves, again, a substantial amount of open space. Therefore, the general protections afforded by the ordinance remain intact. The spirit of the ordinance, spirit and intent of the ordinance will be preserved. The essential character of the locality, if you go through the neighborhood, is maintained. This is a small addition, and it's going to blend in with the house and blend in with that neighborhood quite well, tastefully designed. Granting the variance, or allowing this addition will not threaten the health, safety, or the welfare of the residents in the neighborhood. Third, granting the variance will result in substantial justice. The addition adds a much-needed second bathroom and closet to this 1,061 square foot home. This will create a much more functional space for the owners, and resulting in significant benefit to them. These benefits, in our opinion, outweigh benefits to the public by strictly enforcing these ordinances. Further, we believe there will be no diminution in value to the surrounding properties. Again, the addition's small, it's attractively designed, it doesn't encroach on the side setback any further than the primary existing home, and there's also an arborvitae bush along that area, so that does help shield the view, but these homes are close together as is, so it's not out of character. Literal enforcement will result in unnecessary hardship. This is a small lot, it's a small home, there's a wetland behind the property, so we're in the wetland buffer. The home's tightly squeezed within these setbacks, so it does create hardship on a number of levels for these particular homeowners. Characteristics of the property offer no other feasible location for this master bathroom and closet addition without encroaching on some type of setback. The only other way to go would be towards their neighbors, which I think it's much more reasonable to go slightly towards the road than towards your neighboring property. As stated, there's only one bathroom in this home. I think adding a second bathroom is important to these folks. Given the characteristics of the property, I don't see any fair and substantial relationship that exists between the general purposes of the setbacks and the coverage limits and the application to this particular property. I'm happy to take any questions, should there be any.
Are there questions for Attorney Russo?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, David.
Go ahead, Mr. Rand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me, a little frog in my throat. Which would jump out of there. So I'm looking for a calculation. What contributes to the total coverage that you need relief for? There is a number of accessory buildings. I see a open space calculation on page 94 of our packet. It's your C2 sheet. I didn't see one for the actual building coverage. Did I miss it?
Let's see. It does show under the impervious surfaces, there is a building coverage notation under that chart. Has the existing and proposed.
Okay. And then my other question for you is I know you're talking about the wetlands being behind the property, and that's kind of dictating the location of the addition. But really, the 100-foot buffer, this project totally lies within the 100-foot buffer. Is that correct?
That's correct. Essentially, almost the entirety of this property is within that 100-foot buffer. If you look at the plan there, you can see the line goes pretty close to the road. It tracks the road up the front.
Okay. And being an addition within the buffer, will that need to go before the planning board as well? Or conservation, or?
It should not, no. There was an exception that we were granted. We were considering a conditional use permit to allow this. However, that is not necessary, given there is a specific exception.
Yeah, I cited the section in your staff memo. Because of the square footage, it's under the required amount for a conditional use permit, so it fits the special exception, or the exception within the ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
If anything else was, just to jump on that, if anything else was to occur in building-wise on this property, I think we certainly would. I think that would be the end of our leash, so to speak. With that exception, we would need to get additional approval.
Did you have a question, Mr. Rossi? I thought you and... No?
Never mind.
Hold on. Okay. Any other questions?
I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So the entire property is in the wetlands buffer. The edge of the wetlands is beyond the property line in the back.
Correct. Not the entirety of the property is not within the wetlands buffer. I'm happy to.
Where you're building, though, is within the wetlands buffer.
That is correct.
Okay.
And the wetlands is not on this property.
It's in the back.
The back property, yes.
So I thought you said, and I may have missed it, that the reason for putting it in the front was because of the wetlands.
Well, it is to get it as far away from the wetlands as possible while still adjoined to the property.
Okay.
Because if we put it on the side, A, you're moving closer to your neighbor, and B, you are, if you look at the map, slightly closer to the wetlands. Still within the wetlands buffer, but we're getting close to almost out of it, to the extent that we can feasibly do that in this property.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, yes, you do. Okay,
Yeah,
Mr.
If it were flipped and you put this on the back instead, would you be encroaching on the back setback?
I believe we would. Currently there's a deck, and that deck is, I know, within 25 feet of the back setback. So while I don't have that figure in front of me, I would suspect, based on the survey, that would be a yes. I believe it would, in fact, encroach.
Well, you only have 5 feet of leeway in the back,
Yeah.
I guess, and you have a 13 or 14-foot bump out. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Then the public hearing is closed. What would we like to do?
Well, I'll comment. I'm somewhat troubled by the fact that all of the other homes along this street are set back from the street, similarly to the current setback for this house. And this would be breaking with the rest of the streetscape to allow a addition along the front like that. I haven't made up my mind. I'd like to hear comments from the other board members, but I am concerned by that.
Mr. Mayo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I've been pretty contrarian tonight, and I guess for this particular project, I do share some of Mr. Rossi's concerns, but at the same point in time, it's a pretty modest addition. It's one story. It's a small expansion forward, admittedly for the purposes of a ensuite, which apparently now really is necessary for our modern living standard that we have. I can't say anything. I have a couple of walk-in closets myself, so I can't pass judgment there. In terms of the total coverage, a 2%. There are some other contributing factors on the property. I was just looking at the calculation for it. It's a shed, it's a deck. What we're really striving for here is not to overburden the property with a lot of excessive structures. Really, a couple of those structures are also in and of themselves, of moderate imposition. And then the front yard setback, I do kind of concur. It is closer, but it's also very modest. And this is, looking at map geo, this is one of the applicant's argument is one of the smaller lots. Admittedly, all the properties immediately adjacent to it are about the same size, but there are a number of others in the neighborhood that are larger. There's a whole bunch of different sort of arrangements to some of the buildings. They are all one-story structures, so really doing any modification, you're probably going to be looking at having to take up more land one way or the other with it. So breaking out of my contrarian mode, I think I would be okay with this.
Is that a motion? Is that a motion, Mr.
Sure. With that, I guess to end discussion, I would make a motion to approve the request as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Neese.
Okay. So I went over a lot of it already. I won't belabor more why I think it's good. We'll just try and go through the criteria. So, first two criteria: granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, and granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. We put those two together. Would this change the essential characteristics of the neighborhood? It continues to be a residential function. Yes, it is protruding on the front a little bit beyond what is allowed, and is a little bit closer than some of the other properties. Although, just looking again at the map geo and knowing the neighborhood a little bit, I do think there is some variety across the neighborhood in terms of that. I don't think, because of the modest nature of this addition, only 12, 14 feet wide, something like that, its extension into the front yard is not excessive. It will look natural, and I think from that sense, it's really not changing anything that would say, hey, violates the characteristics of the neighborhood. Granting the variance would do substantial justice. Again, in terms of what the public is trying to get out of this, we don't want overburdening of the property with lots of taller structures. In this case, I mean, it's a 2% variation in total coverage. Some of the other elements that are contributing to that are also modest on their own right. So therefore, it really doesn't present that concern. And the other thing is the front setback, again, modest overall to the width and the imposition of the setback request. So therefore, I don't think there's anything, the public purposes of what we're trying to get out of the ordinance would outweigh the benefit that the applicant is going to get from being able to create their master suite that they're looking for. Granted, the variance would not diminish the values of surrounding properties. Again, it's a residential use. We'll have a small addition in the front yard. Is going to be consistent, will not negatively impact surrounding property values. And lastly, the hardship criteria. What is special about this property relative to the requirements of the zone that it's in? So it is substantially smaller at a 90 by 100 lot. It's quite a bit smaller than the 15,000 that's envisioned for this zone. As a result, and with the setbacks that are really sort of envisioning a bigger lot, as the applicant's representatives has made clear, it kind of really hems this particular structure in a neighborhood of largely one-story structures. Any expansion is probably going to require taking up more room, and any expansion is going to require some relief from this board. What is being requested overall is very modest and reasonable, and for those conditions, for those reasons, I recommend approval.
Does the second have anything to add?
Just very quickly, I would point out that I think 38 Garfield actually is just about the same setback as 38. I think I got that number right. Anyway, 2 doors down is just about the same distance along the whole front of the house as this will be for this small addition. And I think also the siting of this small addition, screened by the, granted, trees can disappear, but screened by the oak tree and the saplings on the side, it's going to be relatively unnoticeable.
Okay, is there discussion before we vote? Okay, the vote is to approve the addition. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mannel?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Rayum?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. So you are approved. Oh, I thought that was-
We approved something.
Yes, I know, that was nice.
It was nice.
Okay.
It's a nice feeling.
The next item of business, item E, the request of Heritage New Hampshire LLC owner and Sweat Studios LLC applicant for property located at 2800 Lafayette Road. Whereas relief is needed for a change of use for Unit 17 to a health club, including the following special exception from Section 10.440, use number 4.42, to allow a health club greater than 2,000 square feet of gross floor area. Said property is located on Assessor Map 285, Lot 2, and lies within the Gateway Corridor District. Welcome.
Hey, good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Ben Middleton. I'm representing Sweat Studios with Martine Northern General Contractor. Tara is here as well as one of the owners. Sweat Studios will be a new, it's 4,120 square feet. In my application, I had 3,800, and that's renovated area, but the total 2 combined spaces is roughly 4,100 square feet. It's going to be a fitness center for spin, yoga, and strength classes. The business model revolves around having a designated area for spin classes with a separate multi-purpose room for strength and yoga. To create a space that will work around the business model, Sweat Studios needs to combine units 17 and 18 of 2800 Lafayette Road. They plan to do an interior-only renovation that combines unit 17 and 18 of 2800 Lafayette Road. The goal is to create a spin studio with a lobby, changing area, and restrooms in Unit 18 with an interior connection to Unit 17 that will be a yoga and fitness room. The spin studio will be 1,000 square feet. The yoga and strength room, roughly 870 square feet. The remaining square footage in the space will be for restrooms, lobby, entrance, locker area, storage, and utilities. The interior renovation will consist of new interior walls, flooring, paint, modifications to the HVAC system, fire alarm, and sprinkler systems to accommodate the new layout. Sweat Studios is a woman-owned and run business that will promote healthy lifestyles within Portsmouth and the Seacoast communities. Regarding the six criteria for special exception, number one, standards as provided by this ordinance for the particular use permitted by special exception. Sweat Studios meets this requirement. The gym space permitted by this ordinance. We are requesting that the size of the fitness studio greater than 2,000 square foot be allowed, as we feel that we are conforming to the district zoning ordinance. The existing space in Unit 18 is already used as a 2,900 square foot fitness studio. We are looking to add 1,125 square feet to meet the needs of the new business model. No hazards, number two, no hazards to the public or adjacent property on account of potential fire, explosion, or release of toxic materials. Sweat Studios meets this requirement. This is a gym space with an interior-only renovation. There's no additional fire hazard created. The sprinkler system will be updated to meet the new floor plan. Number three, no detriment to property values in the vicinity or change in the essential characteristics of any area, including residential neighborhoods or business and industrial districts on account of the location or scale of the buildings and other structures, parking areas, access ways, odor, smoke, gas, dust, or other pollutant, noise, glare, heat, vibration, or unsightly outdoor storage of equipment, vehicles, or other materials. Sweat Studios meets this requirement. This is an interior-only renovation. There will be music played during spin classes, but additional sound installation and drywall will be added around that room to help with noise. There will be an STC rating of 58 around the spin room, as well as noted here that this has already been a gym space that's previously used music as well. No creation of traffic safety hazard or substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity. Sweat Studios meets this requirement. The proposed business would have most classes outside of normal business hours and will not create traffic beyond the area's design capabilities. Historically, F45 was there as a gym, and the retail next door has had traffic coming and going. Number five, no excessive demand on municipal services, including but not limited to water, sewer, waste disposal, police and fire protection in schools. Sweat Studios meets this requirement. This is an interior-only renovation and will use the existing restrooms and services that are already in place. There will not be excessive demand of police, fire protection, or schools. This is a fitness studio where trained professionals will be instructed in classes to ensure proper technique and safety requirements are being followed. And number six, no significant increase of stormwater runoff onto adjacent property or streets. Sweat Studios meets this requirement. This is an interior-only renovation, so there's no change to the exterior of the building. Thank you, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer
Are there
them.
any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak to, for, or against? The public hearing is closed. Mr. Neese.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve to grant the special exception as presented and advertised.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Rossi.
Working through the criteria, this use is clearly allowed by special exception according to our ordinance. There's no evidence that there's going to be any hazard created because of toxic materials. I'll just stop right there. I could make a joke, but I won't. There's no detriment to property values in the vicinity or change in the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. This is a commercial area. This is just another activity that will be there. There's no real change to the characteristics. While there will be some traffic, as the applicant has pointed out, most of the classes will probably be held after some of the other stores are closing, and so I don't see any indication that there'll be a creation of a traffic or safety hazard. No excessive demand on municipal services is going to be added by this. They're using utilities that are already in place. And finally, it's entirely an interior change. There's not going to be any increase in stormwater runoff onto adjacent property or streets. Seeing as how the criteria are being met, I believe we were required to grant the special exception.
Thank you. Does the second have anything to add?
I have nothing to add, but I'd like to hear what your joke was afterwards.
Later.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question for Stephanie, because I was a little confused, because there's a list of previous board actions on here that says already granted 2,000 square foot. That's for unit 18, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
because that was already above 2,000. It was 2,900, I believe.
Okay. Are all the other previous board actions for unit 17?
I believe it's for the entire property.
For the entire, oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Ready for a motion? Yes, approves. Okay.
Vote.
Oh,
Vote.
sorry. I knew that. Mr. Neese?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Beth? Ms. Margison?
Yes.
Mr. Ram?
Yes, although I do miss the Papagenos, but
As do I, actually. Yeah. Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You are approved.
they have great cheesy bread. This is about as far as you can get from great cheese.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Here we go.
All right. Remember, F and G are not going to be heard tonight. So we are on to H. The request of KR Investments, LLC owner, for property located at 271 Sagamore Avenue, whereas relief is needed to demolish the existing house and construct a new house with an attached garage, which requires the following. Variance from section 10.521 to allow A, 28% building coverage where 25% is allowed. B, lot area of 6,880 square feet where 7,500 is required. C, lot area per dwelling unit of 6,880 square feet where 7,500 is required. And D, a continuous lot frontage of 60.08 feet where 100 is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 221, Lot 15, and lies within the General Residence A District. Hello.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is FX Bruton. I'm with Bruton and Barabee in Dover, and I represent the applicant tonight. With me are the representatives from the applicant. Alex Cates and Tyler Ruger are here, if you have any questions of them. Interestingly, the lot, which is on Sagamore Road, is next door to the home that Alex actually lives in. So he's a direct abutter as well, and apparently supports the application. So this is an interesting lot. It's a non-conforming lot. In Portsmouth, you have that criteria that if you want to build on a non-conforming lot, you have to ask this board for a variance. And we've outlined the criteria and the specifications in terms of what we have as lot size and what we have as frontage, and those are the two issues that are the non-conforming aspect of the lot. So we're asking to basically build on the lot, and thus we need to ask for the variance to do that on this lot. The other aspect of this lot is, again, that we were asking for a building coverage that exceeds the 25%. We had calculated that at 27.5. The application has been advertised as 28, and I'm guessing that the planning board likes to round up, planning department likes to round up. That's okay for us. I mean, based on the size of the lot, you're talking about an additional 34 feet. So if it's advertised as 28, and the staff memo to you was 28, we'll, I guess, ask for 28, although our plan shows 27.5. So I just wanted to kind of clarify why my narrative refers to 27.5, as does the plan. The lot is unique in terms of it's very narrow, so if you looked at the elevations and our plan, you can see that basically we're creating a house, a single-family house of relatively modest size, but it will have two garage spaces, and thus the house, in a sense, kind of goes from front to back with a side access for the garage. The existing property contains a single-family house and a single garage. The single garage encroaches already within the side yard setback and the rear setback, and I've outlined how it does that. In our case, we will meet all of the setbacks with the proposed construction. This is in the GRA zone, and again, we're basically, although we're asking for 3 variances, we're asking to build on a non-conforming lot. And again, we're simply asking to go up to the, I'll say the 28 for sake of clarity, but I've explained that. We asked for 27.5, but in any event, we're going to do so, however, with respect to removing all of the existing encroachments on the side and rear yard setbacks. So we think that's a positive gain. And just for perspective, this property may be familiar to you because exactly almost a year ago, the board actually granted variances for an addition to the existing house, and that would have resulted in, and that was a variance that was granted with 28% lot coverage, but it also allowed for a setback of 6 inches from the property line. So we're hopeful you would agree with us that this proposal is even better than what you've approved 1 year ago. The applicant at that time had intended to expand the existing house, and they sent actually a letter to this board in support of our request, indicating that with their 4th child, those plans were not adequate for them. So Mr. Cates was approached, and he agreed to buy the house. The house that will be put on the lot is, I think, almost identical to the house he built next door. And the direct abutter to this lot has submitted a letter as well, and if you don't have it, I have extra copies. And they have suggested that the addition of his house and the addition of this house will certainly increase the aesthetic quality and the value of their properties. So hopefully you have that. If you don't, again, I have extra copies if you'd like to see it. So with that context in mind, I just go through the criteria, and certainly we're here to answer any questions. With respect to the public interest, in a sense, it's a reasonable use, obviously, and I think the ordinance fosters orderly development. In this case, again, we're in a zone that fosters single-family, two-family, and multifamily dwellings on these lots, and we're only asking for a single-family dwelling. And we think that the design that we've presented to you is consistent with the surrounding properties, and as such, this proposal will not alter the essential character of the locality. In fact, if you, again, if I rely on the abutter, I think they have mentioned that the previous house constructed by Mr. Cates next door enhanced the character of the neighborhood, and that this design, which we've worked with them on and showed them the whole design, that they too agree that this would be consistent with the character of that neighborhood. Second test is the spirit of the ordinance being observed, and we respectfully submit that this use is suitable, considering the configuration of the lot. It will allow for the moderate to high density, which is consistent with the zone, GRA zone, and will not in any way unduly and markedly degree conflict with the ordinance, that it violates any of the basic zoning objectives of the ordinance, excuse me. And again, the benefit in this case, again, is that we're going to take an existing encroaching garage, we're going to remove it, and you'll have a structure that meets all of the setbacks as well. Granting the variance would result in substantial justice. This is that balancing test between the harm to the applicant and the benefit to the applicant and any harm to the general public, and we respectfully submit that this provides no burden to the public whatsoever. And again, you've already considered those issues last year and agreed at that time that that was the case. The fourth test is whether the granting of the variance would diminish surrounding property values. There's no negative effect on an abutter. Again, we submitted a letter of support from the abutter. We submitted the letter from the previous owner who just moved out. They as well confirmed, that this would be an enhanced property, and so we rely on that. And again, we think that the surrounding properties would be enhanced, the value would be enhanced rather than diminished. And again, we're getting further away from buildings that encroach towards abutters already and taking that away and being compliant with the ordinance in that regard. The last is the unnecessary hardship test. Again, I'll rely upon the fact that this is a very narrow lot and requires the construction as we presented it. It would allow for a two-car garage. Lot currently only has one. It seems appropriate in the neighborhood. It's identical to what was built basically next door. That's been received well in the community. Given the fact that it will address the ordinance objective in terms of allowing intense single-family development, and the fact that we're removing encroachments and staying within the setbacks, I guess unlike the case that you first had tonight, this is asking for much less relief. And again, it only basically relates to the building lot coverage ratio that you have set. And we're not moving, obviously, that far above that. So with that, we believe it would be an unnecessary hardship to the applicant not to permit the building lot coverage and certainly not to be able to build on this non-conforming lot. So we respectfully request that you grant those variances.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Mr. Rossi?
The lot coverage, there's a deck on the left side
Yeah.
of the property, 4 by 5.
Correct.
Is that above 18 inches, and is that included in the lot coverage calculation?
Yeah, it's included in the 27.5.
I see. So, and what drives the height of that? I mean, is it possible to have it less than 18 inches off the ground?
Oh, the deck?
Yeah, the deck, because if it was lower, you would not need necessarily the lot coverage variance. So, because if it's less than 18 inches high, I don't think it counts as lot coverage. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are correct on that.
So what drives the height of the deck?
Yeah, I think it mostly depends on the grade that we find, but it is included within our request for the 27.5.
Yeah. I'm asking you if you could lower it.
Can you lower it?
How you doing? Tyler Ruger, applicant. It depends on the grade of the house. The groundwater levels are rather high there, so it depends how low we can get the foundation into the ground once we do the site work. So the foundation could be sitting above the ground, more than 18 inches. Ideally, it will be lower than 18 inches, but we wanted to include that in the calculation in the event that it's above 18 inches.
So the answer is that the height is necessary because of the grade of the property.
Correct.
Okay, that's.
Correct.
I'm just looking for the reason. And just, this is really more of curiosity, looking at the orientation of the building. It's interesting because the setbacks form a parallelogram, and you found a way to
Right.
stay within the setbacks, which is
Correct.
quite clever. When I look at the property on the right-hand side of the property line here, the current, where you live now, basically, it looks like this house is kind of rotated counterclockwise about 5 or so degrees, maybe 3 or 4 degrees relative to that
Yeah,
house.
and
What drives all that orientation?
Well, I'll let them talk, but it also relates to what you just described in terms of that configuration of the lot, having that parallelogram shape, but if you want to add to that.
Alex Cates, the applicant here. We just swung that over a degree or two compared to the house next door, so that allows for better egress in and out of the garage there.
I see. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
We
Ms.
don't,
Anderson.
so on the staff report, we don't have the building height listed.
It's listed on the, did I forget to put it in the table itself?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Sorry, it is listed in the notes on the proposed building location plan.
Page
Yeah.
195 of our package.
Yeah, that,
196 also shows it.
that's on the plan,
So it's 32.6, okay.
32.6.
Which, it's actually less than that because of our Byzantine calculation method for building height.
For another night.
Yeah.
And the building height is allowed is 35 in this zone? Okay. So, can I just, a question for the applicant. So, I understand that you're pulling the building, the proposed new building within the envelope. However, the building coverage, though it's only 2.5 or 3% over what is allowed by zoning, is significantly more than what is on the lot now. And that is, can you address why that is not impactful to the neighbors?
I want to make sure I understand what your question is. I apologize, could you repeat that?
So you represented that because the proposed building is within the building envelope, which the existing building is not.
Yep.
That is less impactful to the neighbors. However, the building coverage is increasing significantly. Granted, it's only 2.5 or 3%.
Right.
Over what is allowed, but how is that not impactful to the neighbors?
I think in the first application you had, there was an excellent comment made that when you have a structure that's just a few inches or a foot away from an abutting lot, that anything you can do to move that to a more conforming element, you're better off. In this case, we're taking away a one-story garage, and we're creating within the building envelope completely a house that actually has 2 stories and better serve that house. But we're removing that encroachment that is next to the abutter, which is appreciated by the abutter, and that abutter actually has provided their support to the project. So we think that that is a net positive. And any time that you take anything that's non-conforming and make it more conforming, I think that's just a net positive for all of the abutters.
Thank you.
Mr. Mantle.
From the plans, you're adding a significant amount of pavement, are you not?
Added what?
Pavement. To get to your garage at the back of the house, correct?
Yeah, we added pavement that does bring us to the back of the garage, yes.
Yeah, to the very back of the property.
There was a garage there before, wasn't there?
Since you are starting with a clean slate, why can't you comply with every building ordinance as far as the building goes? You can't do anything about the lot size, you can't do anything about the frontage, but you can easily do something about the building coverage. Why not?
Well, I think you can say that about any request for a variance in most cases, that you could reduce the size of the building, but the question, I think, is is it necessary to do that in order to observe the spirit and intent of the ordinance? Or is it unnecessary? And that's why it's referred to as an unnecessary hardship. So we think in this case, it's unnecessary to get to the 25% because we've preserved the spirit and intent of the ordinance, and there's no conflict between that general intent of the ordinance for orderly development. In this case, to have to restrict it to that level, and that's why we're asking for a variance. I think that's the natural underpinning of any request for a variance.
No, my point is, you're starting with a clean slate. You can easily build a viable house, more than viable, inside of your building envelope without going over any other, the 25%. Like I said, you can't do anything about the hardships intrinsic with the lot.
Right.
The lot size and the road frontage.
Right.
But you can easily do something, since you haven't done anything yet, and it's a blank slate, to not go over any other variances, specifically 25%.
Right.
I mean, granted, we're talking about 180, 200 square feet. I get that, okay? But you're starting from scratch.
I agree.
Why would you ask for another variance?
We're asking for a variance because the way that these designs play out with the two-car garage, we need to ask for that variance. So we need to do that, and this is a modest size. We're all within the envelope of every setback. So we have a building envelope that we'd like to use, but we'd like to use it in a reasonable way. And I think you've highlighted that that extra space, which we need to lay this out the way we think we do, is necessary. And again, it's not a significant request. It's similar to one you granted already on this particular lot in terms of lot coverage last year. So it seems reasonable that that was a reasonable decision, and as it was in a number of cases tonight, it's, in our mind, 2.5% more, which I think is how you looked at other cases tonight, being somewhat de minimis. But it flows with respect to the design that we have, and we'd like to keep the design, and it makes sense to do that. And I think it's reasonable. I think it's a reasonable request.
Okay. Follow-up. Since you want to revert back to the previous variance that was granted, why wouldn't you just use that and build?
Yeah, I mean, it's 28%, so you could say you could do that, but what that was a different structure. So we need to come to you and ask for basically the same variance, but it's a different configuration, so it's a different project. And if the staff or the code enforcement said, you really don't need a variance, you already have it, because the variance goes with the land, that would be great, except that it's a changed configuration, and that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in favor of this project? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? We're closed. What would you like to do?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the applicant's request as presented and advertised.
Is there a second? Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, again, as the applicant has pointed out, they were before this board. Essentially, this is two questions. One, is it a buildable lot? It has had a house on it for a considerable period of time. It is essentially the same as many other properties throughout this neighborhood that have been have houses on them. It will not change the fundamental characteristic in that sense. And then the other is this total coverage, which, as the applicant has indicated, they have come before this board before, received a similar amount of relief for an expansion of the existing home. So with that, granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest, and granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance. So that says, again, changing the essential characteristics of the neighborhood. As I just indicated, this is a lot of record, has had a home on it for a considerable period of time. It is essentially the same size as many other lots that have homes on them. Will continue the current rhythm of the street, is fully compliant with all setback requirements, and is going to be, even though the lot is oddly shaped, it is going to be able to be facing in the same direction with the front of the property like all the other homes in this area do, and it is more conforming in removing the separate garage and using a slightly longer actual building to put an integrated garage into. So no changes to the fundamental characteristics of the neighborhood. Granting the variance to do substantial justice. Is there something that the public would have about saying that this lot shouldn't be built upon, or saying that this modest increase in total coverage of 3% over what is allowed is unduly detrimental? I think that balancing test weighs in favor of the applicant. Yeah, admittedly, as Ms. Martin has pointed out, the current house is only 13%. But that said, what we are really comparing this to is not the imposition of the change in size, because that is allowed by right to up to 25%. It's that additional 3% beyond what is allowed by right. So it's a 3% difference, not compared to what the original house is. The applicant could add on to the original house, or in this particular case, is proposing for various reasons to demolish the existing house and replace it with new with the same encroachment. So again, that balancing test weighs in favor of the applicant. Granting the variance to not diminish the values of surrounding properties. There's nothing. It's a single-family home in a district of single-family homes. Most of the addition is going to be on the rear of the property. It's essentially going to look the same from the front. It's fully in compliance and becoming more compliant with the setbacks. So therefore, it will, if anything, increase the values, so it won't negatively impact them. And then the special conditions of this property, relative to the requirements of the zone that it's in, it is somewhat smaller than the total zone by about 8%. So there's the lot itself is about 8% smaller than what the zone would require. The applicant is asking for an additional 3% of coverage. So really, they're asking for less than their property is smaller than the requirement. Some of that is even just for a patio. Probably not the full amount, but there is a small portion that, again, not overly impactful. We're trying to just say, is this property being overburdened by the additional percentage of coverage? It is not. It's a reasonable request within those confines, and again, is improving the overall compliance with the zoning ordinance, even with that 3% reduction or request for additional coverage. So with that, I recommend approval.
Mr. Rossi, do you have anything to add?
Just qualitatively, Sagamore Avenue is very walkable in this area, and looking at the design of the new structure, it's going to fit right into that neighborhood, and certainly would not diminish anyone's enjoyment of the walkable landscape throughout, or streetscape throughout that area. So I support it for all the reasons that Mr. Rayum pointed out.
Okay. Yes, Ms. March.
So I will not be supporting this motion. I think we did have, when I first got on this board, we had a very similar, and I think it was Mr. Attorney Bruton, application on Sagamore Road. And I believe, I think I made the motion for it, but I construed it too narrowly. And I think that we are looking at this too narrowly, because this concerns the tear down of an existing building on the property. And I don't think the applicant has actually addressed that. We have not talked about that. I disagree with Mr. Rossi in that I think that this could alter the essential character of the neighborhood. If you drive by that area, you'll see a lot of buildings like this, like old New Englanders, they're, and I think that we did allow a tear down and a rebuild of another house, and I think that is, we're seeing the effects of that here with this property. And I do not think that, I think it fails on the spirit and intent because I think it could potentially alter the essential character of the neighborhood. I think that we need to consider the application in the context of also the tear down of the existing building. And I also, I do think that to a certain extent, the 2.5% increase over what is allowed under the zoning ordinance is de minimis. I do, but I think you're looking at a very long structure. I think it's that the lot is going to look quite filled, basically, even though it meets the building envelope.
Yeah, I agree, Ms. Marchant. I can't support this. I did support the previous application for many reasons, but I thought it was an innovative reuse renovation of an existing structure. Going back and looking at that meeting before I came here tonight, and it passed barely. I was struck by a board member's comments who didn't support that motion for setback reasons, even though the setbacks were minor. He couldn't see the hardship with the property at all. And I'm like, that was very interesting. My conclusion is that if the property is going to be a blank slate, there is absolutely no reason why the applicant can conform to all the zoning requirements that he's able to. He can't do anything about building road frontage. He can't do anything about the building lot, but he can certainly do something about coverage. Now, granted, the previous application was 28%. This is a brand-new application. Taking off 180 square feet of the building is not going to be a hardship for him. So I can't support this at all.
Okay, any further comment?
I'll just say one thing to reinforce my motion. I agree the building is long and narrow. It sits on a long and narrow lot. I think it's going to look just fine. And there's other examples in the grocer surrounding neighborhood that look similar.
Okay, we're going to shake it up a little. Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes is to approve, right?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I know it's been that kind of night. Mr. Rayum?
Yes.
Ms. Margison?
No.
Mr. Manow?
No.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You are approved.
Just for the record, that obviously relates to all three requests. 3 variance requests.
What?
Excuse me?
What?
Yes, all 3 were approved.
Oh, yes, yes, sorry.
I'm just saying that for the record, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time.
Once it's done, it will be
And
1.6 million.
I, the request of Maxico LLC owner.
Madam Chair, point of
Yes,
order, 10
yes.
o'clock rule.
Yes.
Need a motion to
Need a
go
motion.
past
I'm sorry, I'm looking at you to
10
make a
o'clock.
motion.
I move that we go past 10 o'clock.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You're very lucky, we just could have shut down.
I was going to say,
Just never
Left.
shut down.
No.
Anyway, the request of Maxico LLC owner and the Wheelhouse of New Hampshire LLC applicant for property located at 865 Islington Street, whereas relief is needed for a change of use to an instructional studio, including the following special exception from section 10.440, use number 4.42, to allow an instructional studio greater than 2,000 square feet gross floor area. Said property is located on Assessor Map 172, Lot 11, and lies within the Character District 4W. Welcome.
Thank you. I think the report that we have there covers most of it, and I don't want to belabor repeating it all. We're definitely excited to do this project. My name is Guy Johnson, and I'm one of the founding members. These are the rest of the founding members right here. So if you have questions for any of us, we do have some differences of expertise, et cetera. But we have learned a little bit since we submitted that report, because we have had the opportunity to meet with the chief inspector and the fire marshal organization. We've gone through a walkthrough of the place pretty extensively with them. They were ready to approve our permit and such, but we have to get past this step first. So we did learn a lot during that process, which we'd be happy to elaborate on some of the points that we've made. But at this point, I'd like to just let you guys ask any questions that you might have if you have any concerns.
I think what we would like is for you to go to the special exception rules and tell us why you should be granted this.
Okay,
Okay.
so
We can give you a copy. You have?
I do have it. It'll just
Okay.
take a second. Okay, so, all right, so the first thing is about posing a hazard to the public or adjacent properties. So our modifications are going to be entirely internal. All the stuff that we're doing in order to get ready, a lot of it is already in very good shape. It was a very well-suited space for what we're trying to do. The modifications that we're going to be making are just some infrastructural things in order to locate, things like electricity and plumbing to the spaces that we need specific to the use. So nothing's going to be changing significantly. I mean, nothing on the outside, and I don't think anything on the inside could pose an additional hazard and such. Again, we have walked through it with the fire marshal and such, and we've even recognized that we're going to be able to mitigate some of the exit requirements and things. There will be less requirements than are currently being addressed, I'll put it that way. So we've actually been pleased to find that it's easier than we thought. We definitely believe this particular use is going to add to and not detract from the property values. We think that the Pottery Studio is going to be a very nice fit with what's going on at the West End. It's compatible with what happens at the Button Factory and so many other places there. So we think it's going to be well enjoyed by the people there. We think it's going to just blend in and kind of help make the West End more of what it's trying to be. We don't believe there'll be a significant impact to traffic or congestion. One of the things about as I understand the nature of the variance that we're asking for, it has to do with the fact that we're larger than a certain square footage. And I think that's partly because we're in a category with uses like yoga studios and exercise studios and things. Those tend to have much larger classes if they scale up to the size that our studio is. However, the way we're laid out and just the way the equipment and such needs to be used for a pottery studio, we can't really scale up the number of attendees of a class very much. So it's not really comparable to those other uses that are in the same category. So I mentioned that just in the context of traffic and such. We do have the owner of the property, Mexico. They have told us that they have 42 spaces on the property, and there's really only between like 15 and 20 being used typically, and that's only during business hours. So we feel like the traffic patterns that we're going to be likely to generate are going to be complementary to and sort of alternate with what's going on there already. So I just don't think there's going to be any significant impact there that would be a problem. I mean, we are part of a pretty large sprawling parking area and throughout that entire side of the street. So finally, stormwater runoff and such, all of that stuff is, again, we're internal only changes. So I don't think there's any impact there at all.
Okay.
Definitely, if there are any concerns, please do ask.
So
Yes.
I just have a question. So I realize it's for over 2,000 square feet, but there's no representation as to how many square feet it's going to be in the staff report or in the application. I just did a little calculation. It looks like it's about 3,200 square feet, but can somebody?
3194.
Excuse me?
3194.
That's right.
Oh, that's what I had. Hey. And I'm a lawyer.
And a mathematician.
Okay, well, I'm very pleased with myself. So now,
It was evident.
all right, that was just a question I had. Thank you.
Mr. Ram?
The only thing, this really speaks to my ignorance about making pottery, toxic materials, anything that you would be storing on site that could be construed as toxic materials?
No, definitely not toxic. We did discuss that with the inspectors. Basically, we're dealing with dirt. And for example, the clay obviously is dirt, but for example, we have glazes and things like that. Those would be the only thing that might fall into that category. But, you know, we checked around and they're considered non-toxic also. I mean, it really is just silica with some, you know, little modifiers for color and things like that. So they're not toxic.
Right, so not dozens of bags of stuff with skull and crossbones on it.
Definitely no skulls and crossbones, but we do have some bags of, of material, yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
That brings up a point. So you said you'll have firing, you'll have a kiln there?
There will be kilns, yes. Yep. You know, we've talked to sprinkler people, we've talked to fire marshals extensively. We've also called the manufacturers, and I feel very confident we understand the risks, and they're not significant. We will be venting the kilns through into the outside. That just helps with the baking process a little bit, but also any just fumes that would be less than fresh air will make their way outside, but even that's not technically required.
And how many kilns?
Oh, yes, and they're electric kilns, thank you. So we're not burning anything in order to fire the kilns. Yeah. Sorry?
And how many will you have?
Right now we have 2 there. We think we're going to need 3, but I think we're going to start with 2.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I'm going to ask you all if there's anyone who, you may say, anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? Anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
In the last category.
2 for or against?
2 for or against, yes. Good evening. Richard Donahue, 871 Islington Street. I am here in my capacity as president of the Condo Association. We are the residential units, part of the Button Factory, which this building is part of that sprawling complex. And I'm here in a neutral capacity at this point because I wanted to find out more about what the proposal was. I've heard a little bit more, I've seen the application, and I do want to raise a couple of points with the board before you make your decision. And one is, of course, traffic and parking. It is a large open lot there. It's shared with a number of other businesses in the area. Part of that parking lot was recently repaved and restriped, but the parking lot immediately in front of the building was not repaired or restriped, so there's no formal parking in front of the building. That's something that needs to be I think probably addressed, and so we can just be clear on where people are going to park, because we do have a problem with people parking in our parking lot, visiting the businesses in the neighborhood. And we also have a problem with people turning in and using our parking lot as a place to U-turn, and they come whipping into the parking lot and they whip out because they made a wrong turn. So that is a problem from our perspective, and it's just something that the board should be aware of before you make your decision. The other concern that we have is that the Button Factory, of course, is over 100 years old. The plumbing in the building, in the whole complex, is a mystery. We share some of the waistline with the Button Factory itself. That much we've confirmed, and we did that through hardship. We had a major sewer backup a few years ago, which we had to repair. We had the city come in, help us do some research on it. We found that we share at least one waste line with the Button Factory itself, and the other buildings that are connected to it, we're not sure where they go, where those sewer lines go, and whether they all feed into our building, which goes out to the street. I don't know, but having a pottery place, which of course will generate a lot of liquid, a lot of wastewater, is a concern. We are not against the concept of another artist studio in the area. We have artist studios as part of our complex, and of course, the Button Factory is right there, and that is a major attraction to the neighborhood. So I just wanted to point out those couple of key items for your consideration before you make a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. 2 for or against. You can be one of those. Okay.
So I'm glad to meet you, by the way. I would definitely like to get a chance to talk to you.
Yeah.
Okay. He talked about the wastewater issue, and of course, we've thought about that too. We are mitigating the waste concern in several manners. There's a correct way to do this so that you're not just sending clay down the drains. Every single sink is going to have like a special trap that was, carefully selected to perform this purpose, et cetera. So we are definitely mitigating that. We're sensitive to that concern, et cetera. And I guess that's the main thing. When it comes to parking, like I said, I think we've got the parking we need on our own property. But yeah, it's always a little confusing over there in terms of, I think people are going to park all over the place. And, it's one of those things that, and I mean, even the addresses are confusing over there. They don't go in order. So I think there's going to be confusion around parking no matter what. And, obviously we're happy to work with our neighbors in whatever way makes sense in order to mitigate whatever we can. So.
Okay. Thank you. 2 for or against. Public hearing is closed.
Good.
Mr. Meeks.
I just have a question. It just seems odd to me that we're lumping a pottery studio under a section of the ordinance that talks about health clubs, studios, and yogas,
And yet,
there's no other place to put it? Is that what it boils down to?
I guess so.
I mean, it's not that section isn't referring to instructional studios. It's referring to athletic studios. And yet, this is where we're trying to grant the variance.
We have murals under signs, so.
Yeah.
Special exception.
Mr. Ray.
So just to add to that, or respond to that concern, I guess, I do find that our ordinance for a city that says that we're all about our arts community, our ordinance does not reflect that very well at all. We've run into this with, painting studios and, our murals, as we've talked about. We claim that we're very supportive of the arts, but the zoning ordinance is not terribly good about it. So I guess I would leave it up to the planning staff to explain, how you fit the jigsaw puzzle in as best you could.
What you vote for.
Yeah, and I can't argue with that. It doesn't have a perfect box to fit in. And there were definitely a lot of planners in on this that came to this the decision that we did, but, it's the closest thing we could find. It's a studio. It is instructional. It may not be athletic in nature, but it is, a class-based function. I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of athletic, if you in nature.
If you're running the wheel.
Only if you're watching.
I mean,
Ghost at the
I'm
same
sure these
time.
guys have really strong forearms, but that's the best I can give you right now.
They don't offer cheesy bread,
Let me suggest that we take this as the truth for the purpose of this meeting, that this is the best place for it to be.
And I would just add, it wouldn't change. It's the same criteria for a special exception.
Right, it doesn't, right.
If it fell into a different category, it would be, as long as it's still a special exception, so.
Okay. Motion, discussion?
I think I would say that the fact that it's not defined in the ordinance gives me a little bit of pause, because in other applications, I've been pretty consistent about if it's not defined in the ordinance, we're really not supposed to be giving any kind of special exception for it. So that does concern me a little bit. I agree with Mr. Rayum. I don't know why certain fundamental tasks of not even just like an art or just not allowed. I mean, we had the issue with the woman trying to give arts lessons.
Yeah, but that was
And there were other issues because it was in a home and whatnot,
in a
but there was
neighborhood.
literally no
Totally different.
ability to do that, and it just seems kind of crazy to me. So I think I'm going to sort of swallow my misgivings, and I think I probably will support this because it just, it is near the Button Factory, which itself also has some artistic endeavors going on in it, so, but that's my thought. But if anyone from the city council is listening,
Mr.
it'd be
Madison.
good to change this.
I'd like a motion to grant the special exception as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm giving it to Mr. Neeson.
There you go.
I clearly heard myself first.
His hand went up first. I was looking that way.
All right, so for the first one, this is allowed, permitted by special exception, so it meets that criteria. No hazard to the public or adjacent property on account of potential fire, explosion, or release of toxic materials. That's been addressed. It's a reasonable, measures of safety are being taken. No detriment to property values in the vicinity or change in the essential characteristics of any area, including residential neighborhoods or business and industrial districts on account of the location or scale of buildings and other structures, parking areas, accessways, odor, smoke, dust, or other pollutant, noise, glare, heat, vibration, or unsightly outdoor storage of equipment, vehicles, or other materials. This will fit right in with the neighborhood. It's near the Button Factory and other artistic studios. The building already exists, and its internal changes that are happening here. And then no creation of a traffic safety hazard or substantial increase in the level of traffic congestion in the vicinity. Obviously, they'll have some traffic coming in and out, but it won't be a substantial increase or be a hazard. Although, yeah, I think it would be good if they can work out getting the lines striped. But you can only do so much about people coming in and turning around, but that's beyond the scope of this particular, even though it's a valid concern. No excessive demand on municipal services, including but not limited to water, sewer, waste disposal, police and fire protection in schools. This, again, it won't be any excessive demand, so that's a reasonable, that criteria is met. And then no significant increase on stormwater runoff onto adjacent property or streets, and because this is an internal changes going on, that won't affect the stormwater runoff.
Do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Then, a yes vote allows the special exception. Mr. Neeson.
Comments?
Oh, yes.
Yes,
I'm
I'd just
sorry.
like to make a
I need
comment.
eyes behind that.
I'm going to not support the motion, just because I think it's important to have a dissenting vote to reflect the fact that there is no mention of this particular use for special exception in our ordinance. We're kind of making a stretch interpretation here, and I don't think that we are always going to want to do that. So
So a protest vote.
it's kind of a yes. You can call,
And
you can
it will
call it
be in the
whatever you want.
minutes. Excellent.
Yep.
Okay. Mr. Neese.
Yes.
Mr. Mannel.
Yes.
Ms. Margerson.
No, I'm going to join the protest vote, only to get the
Mr.
city council
Graham.
to change it.
Yes.
Mr. Rossi.
No.
Mr. Mattson.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. You have your studio. You're welcome.
Change the ordinance.
Yeah.
If it's
I think that
fine,
should be said.
you just deny
Well,
it.
no, I mean about having to
I'd
break
like to
that.
make-
Have the applicants go screw
Is there
back.
any new business that anybody would
Oh.
like to discuss?
You can argue.
People, we're still in session.
Just one thing, I guess we have talked, and we've brought up some more issues tonight about how we conduct the board. We've talked about trying to have a separate meeting where we go through those issues. Anything further on a thought for doing that? Obviously, finding a second week, it can be tough, but I do think it is important for the board to maybe
Yeah,
discuss
and
some
I'm
of those
glad
things.
you reminded us. It kind of has.
Let's do it now. Just kidding.
Yeah, good idea.
Just kidding.
So I just throw that out there for consideration of the chair and vice, or
I will,
vice chair.
yes, I will speak with the department. And is there a favorite motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.